The ocean was calm and blue under the bright afternoon sun. Captain Elena stood on the deck of her ship, the Silver Star. She touched the smooth wood of the railing and smiled. This ship was her life. It was fast, strong, and beautiful. The white sails caught the wind, and the ship moved smoothly across the water. Elena was a tall woman with sharp eyes and strong hands. She was 30 years old and a respected merchant. Her crew consisted of 20 men and women. They were all adults, experienced sailors who knew the ocean well. They worked quietly, cleaning the deck and checking the ropes. "Captain," said a calm voice behind her. It was Marcus, her first mate. "There is a ship on the horizon. It is moving very fast." Elena raised her telescope. She looked at the black dot in the distance. It grew larger every minute. It was a large ship with dark sails. Suddenly, a red flag went up the mast. It was a pirate flag. "Prepare for battle," Elena shouted. Her voice was loud and clear. The crew stopped cleaning and ran to their positions. They opened the crates of swords and prepared the cannons. The atmosphere on the Silver Star changed from peaceful to dangerous in seconds. The black ship arrived quickly. It was the Iron Dragon, the ship of the famous pirate, Captain Draco. Smoke erupted from the side of the pirate ship. A moment later, a heavy iron ball hit the side of the Silver Star. Wood splintered and flew into the air. The ship shook violently. "Fire back," Elena ordered. Her crew fired their cannons, but the pirate ship was too fast. It turned sharply and came right next to them. Ropes with hooks flew through the air and caught onto Elena's ship. The two ships were locked together. Pirates jumped from the Iron Dragon onto the Silver Star. They yelled and waved heavy swords. Elena pulled her own sword from her belt. She fought bravely. She blocked a heavy strike from a large pirate and pushed him back. Around her, her crew fought hard, but there were too many pirates. Suddenly, the fighting stopped. A tall man walked onto the deck. He wore a long red coat and a black hat. It was Captain Draco. He held a pistol in his hand. "Stop," Draco said. His voice was deep and cold. "The ship is mine." Elena looked around. Her crew was on their knees. They were defeated. She dropped her sword. "You are a thief, Draco," Elena said, her eyes full of anger. Draco laughed. "I am a pirate. Get off my new ship." His men forced Elena and her crew into a small lifeboat. They lowered it into the water. Elena sat in the small boat and watched. The pirates turned the Silver Star around. Draco stood at the wheel of her ship. Elena did not cry. She watched her beautiful ship sail away into the distance. She clenched her fists. This was not the end. The small lifeboat floated on the open ocean for 2 days. The sun was hot and unforgiving. Elena and her crew had very little water and no food. They took turns rowing the boat. Their arms were tired, and their skin was burned by the sun. Nobody spoke much. The loss of the Silver Star was a heavy weight on everyone's mind. Finally, on the morning of the 3rd day, a sailor pointed a shaking finger at the horizon. "Land!" he shouted with a dry throat. In the distance, a grey island rose from the sea. It was not a beautiful place. It was Port Vane, a dirty and crowded settlement known for smugglers and sailors out of luck. They rowed hard and reached the wooden docks by the afternoon. The smell of the port was strong. It smelled of old fish, tar, and cheap rum. They tied the small boat to a rotting wooden post and climbed onto the pier. The ground felt strange under their feet after days on the water. Elena stood up straight and brushed the dirt from her clothes. She looked at her crew. There were 20 of them. They looked tired, hungry, and unhappy. They were good sailors, but they were not soldiers. They worked for money, and now Elena had no ship and no money to give them. Marcus, the first mate, stepped forward. He was a good man, but he looked defeated. He took off his cap and held it in his hands. "Captain," Marcus said quietly, "we survived, and we thank you for that. But we have families. We have bills to pay. We cannot wait for you to find a new ship." Elena looked at the faces of her crew. She saw disappointment. She understood them. In this world, loyalty was expensive. "I understand, Marcus," Elena said. Her voice was steady. "You are free to go. Find new work. Take care of yourselves." One by one, the sailors nodded to her. Some looked sad. Others just looked away. They picked up their small bags and walked into the busy streets of Port Vane. They disappeared into the crowd of strangers. Marcus was the last to leave. "Good luck, Elena," he said. Then he turned and walked away. Elena was completely alone. The busy port was loud. Sailors shouted, merchants argued over prices, and seagulls flew overhead. Elena stood on the edge of the dock and looked at the empty horizon. She had no crew, no weapon, and no ship. She reached into her boot. Hidden there was a small leather pouch. She opened it and counted the gold coins inside. There were only 50 coins. It was not enough to buy a ship. It was barely enough to buy food and a room for a week. She closed the pouch and put it back in her boot. She turned her back on the ocean and walked toward the town. She needed a drink, and she needed a plan. Elena walked to the far end of the harbor. This part of Port Vane was called the graveyard. Here, the ships were not proud or beautiful. They were old, broken, and forgotten. The water here was dark with oil and floating trash. She walked past a ship with a broken mast. She walked past another with a large hole in its side. Elena ignored them. She needed something that could float, and something she could afford with her 50 gold coins. An old man sat on a crate near the edge of the water. He was eating an apple with a knife. He had grey hair and wore a dirty blue coat. This was Garrick, the seller of broken ships. "Are you lost, woman?" Garrick asked without looking up. "The passenger ships are on the other side of the port." "I am not a passenger," Elena said firmly. "I am a captain. I want to buy a ship." Garrick laughed. He threw the core of his apple into the water. "A captain? You look like a beggar. What can you afford here? Show me what you have for 50 gold coins," Elena said. She did not show him the money. Garrick stopped laughing. He stood up and looked at her seriously. 50 gold coins was not a fortune, but it was real money. He walked along the dock and pointed to a small, ugly boat at the end of the line. "That is the Rusty Crab," Garrick said. Elena looked at it. It was a small vessel with 2 masts. The paint was peeling off, revealing grey, rotting wood underneath. The sails were wrapped up, but they looked old and dirty. The name Rusty Crab was barely visible on the side. "It floats," Garrick said, shrugging his shoulders. "The engine is old, but it works sometimes. The sails have a few holes, but the hull is solid." Elena stepped onto the deck of the Rusty Crab. The wood creaked loudly under her boots. The wheel felt rough in her hands. It smelled of wet wood and old fish. It was nothing like the Silver Star. It was ugly and slow. But it was a ship. "How much?" Elena asked. 60 coins. Garrick said quickly. "I have 45. Elena lied. "Take it or I leave." Garrick looked at the sad little boat. He knew nobody else wanted it. It had sat there for 2 years. He spat on the ground. "Fine," he grumbled. 45. "But you take it as it is." No refunds. Elena reached into her boot and counted out 45 gold coins. She placed them in Garrick's dirty hand. He bit one of the coins to test it, then nodded and walked away. Elena stood alone on the deck of her new command. She had a ship. She had 5 gold coins left. She had no crew. She looked up at the empty masts. "You are ugly," she whispered to the boat. "But you are going to help me get my life back." Elena climbed down into the bottom of the Rusty Crab. This was the engine room. It was dark, hot, and smelled of old oil. In the center of the room sat a large, metal engine. It was covered in rust and black grease. Elena kicked it lightly with her boot. A piece of metal fell off. "I cannot fix this," she said to herself. "I am a captain, not a mechanic." She climbed back up to the deck. She needed to find someone who understood machines. She walked off the ship and went back into the busy streets of Port Vane. She asked a local fisherman where the mechanics worked. He pointed to a large, open shed near the blacksmith. Elena walked to the shed. Inside, the air was hot. There were chains, gears, and tools everywhere. In the middle of the room, a man was lifting a heavy iron anchor. He was huge. His arms were as thick as tree trunks. He wore a dirty leather apron and had a bald head. Elena walked up to him. "Excuse me," she said. The man dropped the heavy anchor. He turned around. His face was covered in soot and oil, but his eyes were bright blue. "I am busy," the man rumbled. His voice was deep. "I am Captain Elena," she said. "I need a mechanic for my ship." The man wiped his hands on a rag. "I am Barnaby. I am the best mechanic on this island. I am also expensive. Can you pay?" Elena hesitated. She only had 5 gold coins left. That was not enough for a salary. "I cannot pay you today," she said honestly. "But we are going to chase a very rich pirate. When we catch him, you will be rich." Barnaby laughed. It was a loud, booming laugh. A promise of gold. "I cannot eat promises. Which ship is yours?" "The Rusty Crab," Elena answered. Barnaby stopped laughing. He looked at her with disbelief. "That floating garbage. I know that boat. The engine has not worked in 10 years. It is a death trap. It is a challenge." Elena corrected him. "Are you afraid of a challenge?" Barnaby looked at Elena. He saw her serious face and her confident posture. He was bored with fixing anchors and small fishing boats. He liked difficult machines. "The engine is a disaster," Barnaby said, scratching his chin. "It will take hard work. It will take magic. Can you do it?" Elena challenged him. Barnaby smiled. His teeth were white against his dirty face. "I can fix anything. If I make that pile of junk move, I want 10% of the treasure." 5%. Elena countered. 8. Barnaby said. "Agreed," said Elena. She extended her hand. Barnaby shook her hand. His hand swallowed hers completely. "I will get my tools," he said. "Let us go see this disaster." Barnaby carried a heavy leather bag full of tools over his shoulder. He walked heavily on the wooden dock. When he saw the Rusty Crab up close, he shook his head. "It is worse than I thought," Barnaby said. "The wood is grey. The ropes are rotting. Look at the inside," Elena said. She opened the hatch to the engine room. They climbed down the narrow ladder. The air was thick and smelled of old oil. Barnaby placed his bag on the floor and opened it. He took out a large wrench and a hammer. He looked at the engine. It was a block of red rust and black grease. This engine has not turned in years. Barnaby grunted. He touched a pipe. It broke in his hand. Great. Everything is broken. Tell me what to do. Elena said. She rolled up her sleeves. Barnaby looked at her. Captain, this is dirty work. You will ruin your clothes. I do not care about clothes. Elena replied. I care about my ship. Give me a job. Barnaby nodded. He liked her attitude. Take this rag. Clean the grease off those valves. I need to see the metal. For the next 4 hours, they worked in the small, hot room. Elena scrubbed the metal until her fingers were sore. Her face was smeared with black oil. Her shirt was stained. Barnaby worked on the pistons. He used his great strength to force the rusted parts to move. He hit the metal with his hammer. He pulled on heavy wrenches. Pass me the oil. Barnaby said. Elena handed him a can of oil. He poured it into the machine. Now, we try to turn it manually. Barnaby put a large metal bar into the side of the engine. Push. He shouted. Elena grabbed the bar next to him. They pushed together. The engine did not move. It was frozen solid. Again. Barnaby roared. On 3. 1, 2, 3. They pushed with all their strength. Elena's boots slipped on the oily floor. Her muscles burned. Suddenly, there was a loud metallic crack. The bar moved an inch. It moved. Elena gasped, breathing hard. Do not stop. Barnaby said, sweat dripping from his bald head. Keep pushing. They pushed again. Slowly, very slowly. The internal parts began to rotate. The rust gave way. The engine turned one full circle. Barnaby dropped the bar and sat on the floor. He was exhausted. He wiped his face with a dirty rag. It is free. It is not running yet. But the parts move. We did it. Elena sat down next to him on the cold metal floor. She was tired but happy. Good work, Barnaby. Barnaby looked at the captain. She was covered in dirt. Just like him. You are strong for a merchant. He admitted. Maybe this crazy plan will work. Elena smiled through the grease on her face. Tomorrow, we make it run. Tonight, we rest. The sun went down, and the air turned cool. Elena and Barnaby washed the oil off their hands in a bucket of seawater. They were tired and very hungry. I know a place. Barnaby said. The food is bad, but the drinks are cheap. They walked to a tavern called the Salty Dog. It was a loud building near the center of Port Vane. Inside, the room was full of smoke and noise. Pirates and sailors sat at wooden tables, drinking and shouting. A fire burned in the fireplace. Elena and Barnaby found a small table in the corner. Elena ordered bread and meat. She still looked messy. Her hair was loose, and there was a smudge of grease on her cheek. A large man with a red beard sat at the next table. He looked at Elena and laughed. He was drunk. Look at this. The man shouted to his friends. A lady mechanic. Or a beggar. Elena ignored him. She cut her bread with a knife. The man stood up and walked over. He slammed his heavy hand on Elena's table. I am talking to you, woman. Why are you so dirty? Elena looked up calmly. I am a captain. Go away. The man laughed louder. A captain. You look like a rat. He reached out to grab her arm. Elena moved fast. She stood up and twisted the man's wrist. She kicked him hard in the knee. The man yelled in pain and fell back against his table. His drink spilled everywhere. Get her! The man screamed. 3 of his friends stood up. They were angry. They pulled out small knives. Barnaby stood up to help, but Elena held up her hand. She was ready to fight. Suddenly, a shadow moved in the back of the room. A man sitting alone stood up. He was thin but looked dangerous. He wore a long grey coat. He walked silently toward the fight. One of the angry sailors lunged at Elena. Before he reached her, the stranger in the grey coat moved. He swept the sailor's legs with his boot. The sailor fell hard. The stranger turned and punched the second man in the stomach. The man collapsed, gasping for air. The third man looked at the stranger and dropped his knife. He was afraid. "Leave," the stranger said quietly. The drunk men picked up their friend and ran out of the tavern. The room became quiet. Everyone looked at the stranger. He sat back down at his table as if nothing happened. Elena walked over to him. "Thank you," she said. The man looked at her. He had a scar over his left eye. "I do not like bullies," he said. "You fight well." Elena said, "I need a fighter on my ship. We are going after Captain Draco." The man paused. He looked at Elena's determined eyes. "Draco?" he asked. "Draco killed my brother. Join me," Elena said. "We will make him pay." The man finished his drink. He stood up and extended a hand. "My name is Dante. When do we leave?" The next morning, the sun rose over Port Vane. The light revealed the peeling paint on the rusty crab. Elena stood on the deck with her two new crew members. Barnaby the mechanic looked huge next to the thin, quiet Dante. Barnaby looked at Dante doubtfully. "He is very small." Barnaby grumbled. "Can he pull a rope?" Dante did not smile. He looked at the giant man coolly. "I can cut a rope in the air with a knife," he said softly. "Enough," Elena said. "We have a mechanic and a fighter, but we cannot sail without a navigator. I can steer, but I do not know the secret routes. We need someone who knows the stars and the currents." Barnaby scratched his bald head. "I know a man. His name is Finch. He is crazy, but he is the best navigator in the port. He lives on the high cliff." They walked up the steep stone stairs to the highest part of the town. At the top of a cliff, there was a small wooden shack. The roof was open to the sky. Inside, the walls were covered with maps and drawings of constellations. An old man sat on the floor. He had wild white hair and wore thick glasses. He was surrounded by piles of paper. He was mumbling to himself. "Finch!" Barnaby called out. The old man jumped. He looked at them with wide eyes. "Who is there? You are blocking my light." "I am Captain Elena," she said, stepping forward. "I need a navigator." Finch laughed. It was a high, scratchy sound. "I am retired. The ocean is boring. It is just water. I prefer my maps. We are hunting Captain Draco," Elena said. Finch stopped laughing. He stood up slowly. He was very short. He walked up to Elena and looked closely at her face. "Draco, the Pirate King. That is a suicide mission. No map can show you where he hides." "I do not need a map to his hiding place," Elena said. "I need someone who can track him. I need someone who can sail through storms and rocks without fear. Are you too old for that?" Finch's eyes sparkled behind his thick glasses. He looked at his dusty maps, then back at Elena. He missed the smell of salt and the feeling of the wind. Retirement was safe, but it was dull. Draco sails fast ships. Finch said thoughtfully. "To catch him, you must take dangerous shortcuts. You must sail through the black reefs and the foggy tides. Can you guide us?" Elena asked. Finch smiled. He picked up a long, rolled-up map and a compass. I can guide you to hell and back, Captain. But I want my own cabin. And nobody touches my maps. Agreed, Elena said. Finch put his hat on his head. Well, what are we waiting for? The tide is changing. The four of them stood on the deck of the Rusty Crab. The ship rocked gently in the water. They had a captain, a mechanic, a fighter, and a navigator. They were a team. But they had a big problem. Report, Elena said. She looked at her crew. Barnaby wiped his hands on a rag. The engine runs, Captain. But the fuel tank is almost empty. We have enough coal for maybe 2 hours of travel. After that, we drift. Finch adjusted his glasses. I checked the kitchen. It is very clean because there is no food. There is no water in the barrels. We will die of thirst in 2 days. Dante kicked a wooden crate near the mast. The weapon locker is empty. We have no gunpowder and no cannonballs. If we see Draco today, we can only throw rocks at him. Elena sighed. She reached into her boot and pulled out her leather pouch. She turned it upside down. 5 small gold coins fell into her hand. This is all we have, Elena said quietly. The crew looked at the coins. 5 coins could buy food for a week, or coal for a day. It could not buy both. It certainly could not buy weapons. We are poor, Finch complained. I left my comfortable shack for this. We need supplies, Barnaby said. We cannot cross the ocean on hope. Dante looked at the busy port. We can steal supplies, he suggested coldly. We are enemies of the law now. No, Elena said firmly. We are not common thieves. We are professionals. We will earn our supplies. How? Asked Finch. We have a broken ship and no reputation. Elena looked toward the center of the port. There was a large building with a green flag. It was the Merchants' Guild. Rich traders went there to hire ships for transport. We will take a job, Elena decided. A short delivery. Dangerous work pays well. We will use the money to fill the ship with food and fuel. A job, Dante scoffed. I am a fighter, not a delivery boy. Do you want to eat? Elena asked him. Dante touched his stomach. It was empty. He nodded slowly. Fine. But nothing too heavy. Barnaby, stay here and guard the ship, Elena ordered. Finch, make a list of exactly what we need. Dante, come with me. We are going to find work. Elena put the 5 coins back in her pocket. She fixed her collar and walked down the gangplank. She had to look confident. She had to look like a captain who didn't need money, even though she was desperate. The Merchants' Guild was a large, impressive building. The floor was made of polished marble, and large chandeliers hung from the ceiling. It was full of wealthy captains in fine clothes. Elena felt out of place in her dirty coat, but she walked with her head high. Dante walked behind her, looking dangerous and silent. They walked to the urgent jobs board. Most of the papers were already taken. The safe and easy jobs always went first. Only one paper remained on the board. Elena read it. Transport needed immediately. Destination: Black Rock Island. Cargo: Special. Payment: 200 gold coins. 200 coins. Dante whispered. That is a lot of money for a short trip. Black Rock is only 3 hours away. It pays well because nobody wants to go there, Elena said. It is dangerous. A short, nervous man in a green suit walked up to them. He was sweating. Are you looking at my job? He asked quickly. My name is Silas. I am Captain Elena. I have a ship, she said. Silas looked at her. You do not look like a merchant. But I am desperate. The other captains refused. They say the route is too rocky. My navigator is the best. Elena said confidently. What is the cargo? Silas looked around to make sure nobody was listening. He leaned in close. It is a single crate. It contains unstable chemical vials. They are for a laboratory on the island. If you shake the crate too much, it explodes. If you get it wet, it explodes. If you are late, the chemicals spoil. Dante stepped back. Explosives. On our old boat. Elena silenced him with a look. She turned back to Silas. We will take it. But for a job this dangerous, we want half the money now. Silas hesitated. He looked at Dante's scar and the knife at his belt. He swallowed hard. Fine. 100 now. 100 when you deliver the crate safely. He handed Elena a heavy bag of coins. My men will bring the crate to your ship in 1 hour. Be careful, Captain. Do not drop it. Elena took the money. It felt heavy and good in her hand. We will be ready, she promised. As they walked out of the guild, Dante shook his head. We are going to die. Barnaby will drop a wrench, and we will explode. We will not die. Elena said, smiling. We are going to buy food, coal, and rum. Then, we will sail very, very carefully. They walked quickly to the market. With 100 gold coins, they could finally prepare the rusty crab for the ocean. It was a risky start, but they were back in business. The next hour was a rush of activity. Elena and her crew ran through the market. With the 100 gold coins, they bought everything they needed. Barnaby carried heavy sacks of black coal on his shoulders. Dante carried barrels of fresh water and salted meat. Finch bought a new telescope and some paper for his maps. They loaded the supplies onto the rusty crab. The ship sat lower in the water now, heavy with fuel and food. It felt like a real vessel again. Just as they finished, a cart arrived on the dock. 2 men carefully lifted a wooden crate. It was painted red and had the word danger written in large black letters. Silas, the nervous merchant, watched them from a safe distance. Be gentle, Silas shouted. If you drop it, the whole dock disappears. Barnaby took the crate. His hands were huge, but he held the box as if it were a fragile egg. He walked slowly to the center of the deck. He placed the crate on a pile of old blankets to keep it soft. He tied it down with ropes so it would not move. Is it safe? Elena asked, looking at the red box. It is secure, Barnaby said, wiping sweat from his forehead. But we must not hit any big waves. If the ship shakes too hard, boom. Elena nodded. She walked to the wheel. She looked at Finch. Navigator, give me a course. Finch opened his map. Steer carefully out of the harbor. Then, head east toward the grey clouds. Black Rock Island is there. Elena took a deep breath. She put her hands on the wooden wheel. It felt good. Barnaby, start the engine. Slow speed. Barnaby went down to the engine room. A moment later, the ship began to vibrate. Dark smoke rose from the chimney. The engine coughed and sputtered, but it kept running. The propeller turned in the water. Cast off the ropes, Elena ordered. Dante untied the thick ropes from the dock. He jumped onto the deck as the ship began to move. The rusty crab moved away from the wooden pier. It was slow and ugly. People on the dock stopped to watch. Some laughed at the peeling paint. Others looked worried about the black smoke. But Elena did not care. She was moving. She steered the ship past the large merchant vessels and the fishing boats. The water turned from dirty green to deep blue. The noise of the port faded away. All she could hear was the wind in the rigging and the steady beat of the engine. They passed the lighthouse at the end of the harbor wall. The open ocean stretched out before them. It was vast and dangerous. "We are free," Elena whispered. She looked back at Port Vane one last time. She was leaving the safety of the land. Somewhere out there, Captain Draco was sailing the Silver Star. The hunt had officially begun. The journey to Black Rock Island was short, but it felt very long. The ocean was choppy. Small waves hit the side of the Rusty Crab, making the ship rock from side to side. On the deck, Barnaby did not move. He stood next to the red crate of explosives. He looked terrified. Every time the ship moved, he held his breath. "Steady, Captain!" Barnaby shouted toward the wheel. "If we hit a big wave, we become fish food." "I'm trying, Barnaby," Elena replied. Her hands held the wheel tight. "Finch, do you see the rocks?" Finch stood at the front of the ship. He looked through his new telescope. "Turn left, Captain. There is a sharp reef ahead. 2 degrees port." Elena turned the wheel. The old ship groaned, but it turned. They passed a large black rock that stuck out of the water like a jagged tooth. It was close, but they did not touch it. After 3 stressful hours, they saw the island. Black Rock was a dark, volcanic island. There was a small stone pier with a laboratory building nearby. A few men in white coats waited for them. Elena steered the ship gently to the pier. Barnaby threw the ropes to the men on the dock. They tied the ship securely. "Do not bump the dock," Barnaby warned them. He carefully untied the red crate. With Dante's help, they lifted the heavy box and carried it off the ship. They placed it gently on the stone ground. The head scientist opened the lid and checked the vials. He nodded. "Perfect condition." The scientist said, "You are excellent sailors." He handed Elena a bag with the remaining 100 gold coins. Elena smiled. They had done it. They were safe. And they had money. "Thank you," Elena said. "But I need something else. I am looking for a ship. The Silver Star. It was stolen by Captain Draco." The scientist's face turned pale. "Draco? The Pirate King? We do not speak his name here. He is dangerous." "I know he is dangerous," Elena said. "I'm going to catch him. Have you seen his ships?" The scientist looked around nervously. "I have not seen him. But the supply ships from the north say that Draco has been attacking merchants near the Foggy Isles. He is gathering gold." "The Foggy Isles," Elena repeated. She looked at Finch. Finch nodded. "I know the place. It is 3 days of travel to the north. It is a good place to hide." Elena turned back to her crew. "We have fuel. We have food. And now we have a direction." Dante crossed his arms. "The Foggy Isles are huge. It will be a slow hunt." "Then we start now," Elena said. "We will check every island and every bay. We will not stop until we find him." She climbed back onto the Rusty Crab. The engine rumbled to life. They left Black Rock Island behind and turned the ship toward the north. The Real chase had begun. For 2 days, the Rusty Crab sailed north. The ocean was calm, and the sun was warm. The crew began to relax. They ate good food and slept in shifts. But on the afternoon of the 3rd day, the weather changed. The blue sky turned a bruised purple. Thick, Heavy clouds gathered on the horizon. The wind, which was usually a gentle breeze, became strong and cold. It whistled through the ropes of the ship. Finch stood at the bow. He held his hat to keep it from flying away. He looked at the sky with a worried expression. "Captain," Finch called out. "Barometer is dropping fast. A big storm is coming." Elena looked up. She felt the change in the air pressure. "Secure the deck," she ordered. "Tie down everything loose. If it falls, we lose it." Dante ran across the deck. He used heavy ropes to tie the water barrels and the crates of food. The waves began to grow larger. The ship rocked uncomfortably. Barnaby climbed up from the engine room. His face was covered in grease. "The engine is running hot. Captain, if the waves are too high, the propeller will come out of the water. It will damage the shaft." "Keep it running, Barnaby," Elena said. "We need power to steer into the waves. If we stop, we will capsize." Barnaby nodded and went back down into the dark hole of the ship. Night fell, but there were no stars. The darkness was total. Suddenly, the rain began. It did not start slowly. It fell in heavy sheets, like a waterfall from the sky. The wind howled around the cabin. Huge waves crashed against the front of the Rusty Crab. The old wood groaned and creaked loudly. Every time a wave hit, the ship shook as if it were in pain. Elena stood at the wheel. The rain stung her face. Her clothes were soaked instantly. She struggled to hold the wheel steady. The ocean tried to turn the ship sideways, but Elena fought back. "Dante!" she shouted over the wind. "Check the sails. Make sure they are wrapped tight." Dante climbed up the mast in the dark. The ship swayed wildly below him. He was a brave man, but he held the ropes very tightly. He checked the canvas sails. They were secure. He climbed down quickly, his boots slipping on the wet wood. "It is secure," Dante yelled. A massive wave rose up in front of them. It was higher than the ship. Elena held her breath. The Rusty Crab climbed up the face of the water, hung at the top for a second, and then slammed down on the other side. Water washed over the deck. It flowed around Elena's boots. She shivered from the cold. "Hold together, old girl," she whispered to the ship. The storm raged for hours. Lightning flashed, illuminating the terrified faces of the crew. They were small in a very big, very angry ocean. They could do nothing but hold on and wait for the morning. The storm continued through the night. The waves were relentless, hitting the Rusty Crab again and again. Elena's arms were numb from holding the wheel. She was cold, wet, and tired. She could not see the moon or the stars, only the white foam of the angry ocean. Suddenly, the hatch to the lower deck burst open. Barnaby climbed out. He was soaking wet, but not from the rain. "Captain!" he shouted. His voice was full of panic. "We are taking on water." A plank in the hull gave way. Elena's heart beat faster. If the water filled the ship, they would sink in minutes. "Take the wheel," she ordered Finch. Finch grabbed the wheel. He looked terrified, but he held it tight. "Keep her steady into the waves," Elena yelled. She ran to the hatch and climbed down into the darkness. She followed Barnaby to the engine room. The situation was bad. Cold seawater sprayed into the room from a crack in the side of the ship. The water was already up to Elena's ankles. It swirled around the base of the hot engine, creating steam. "The pump!" Elena shouted. "Where is the bilge pump?" "It is too slow," Barnaby yelled back. He was holding a piece of wood against the crack, trying to stop the flow. "The pressure is too strong." Dante appeared behind them. He held 2 large metal buckets. "I will bail," he said. He filled a bucket with water and ran up the ladder to throw it back into the ocean. He moved fast, up and down, like a machine. Elena looked around the room. She needed something to seal the hole. "Barnaby, move your hand." Barnaby moved. Water shot into the room again. Elena grabbed a thick canvas top and a hammer. She placed the heavy cloth over the crack. "Hold this," she told Barnaby. Barnaby used his massive strength to press the cloth against the broken wood. The water flow slowed down. Elena grabbed a spare wooden board and some long iron nails. She hammered the board over the cloth. She hit the nails hard. 1, 2, 3, 4. The board held tight. The water stopped spraying. It only dripped slowly now. "It will hold for now," Elena gasped. She wiped wet hair from her face. Barnaby slumped against the wall. He was breathing heavily. "The engine is safe," he said. "But the hold has too much water. We are heavy." "Dante is still working," Elena said. They spent the next 2 hours helping Dante. They filled buckets and carried them up the ladder. It was back-breaking work. Their muscles burned. But slowly, the water level in the room went down. By the time the sun began to rise, the storm had passed. The ocean was calm again. The rusty crab was still floating. They were alive. The sun rose over a calm sea. The storm was gone, leaving the sky a bright, clean blue. The rusty crab drifted slowly on the gentle waves. The crew was exhausted. They sat on the wooden deck, leaning against the walls and crates. They did not speak for a long time. They just breathed the fresh, salty air. Elena looked at her team. Barnaby was snoring softly. His large hands were black with grease and blood from small cuts. Dante was looking at his blistered palms. The heavy buckets had hurt his skin. Finch was wiping salt off his telescope with a dry corner of his shirt. They looked terrible, but they were the best crew she could ask for. "Wake up," Elena said gently. "The sun is warm. We need to dry the ship." Barnaby opened one eye. "I want to sleep for a week," he grumbled. "You can sleep when we are dead," Dante said. He stood up slowly, his joints cracking. "The captain is right. Everything is wet. If we do not dry it, the mold will grow." They worked together all morning. It was not frantic work like the night before. It was slow and steady. They hung wet blankets and clothes on the ropes to dry in the sun. They opened the hatches to let the fresh air into the dark, damp rooms below. They checked the food supplies. Some of the bread was soggy and ruined, but the salted meat was safe in the barrels. Barnaby went down to check the patch in the hull. He returned with a nod. "It is ugly," he said, "but it is strong. The wood has swelled with the water, making it tight. It will hold until we find a port." At noon, Finch made a fire in the small metal stove. He cooked a simple soup with dried meat and potatoes. It was not a fancy meal, but it smelled delicious to the hungry sailors. They sat in a circle on the deck and ate from wooden bowls. "I thought we were going to sink," Finch admitted. He blew on his hot soup. "I was ready to swim." "You cannot swim, Finch." Barnaby laughed. "You are too small. The fish would eat you." "I would float," Finch argued with a smile. "I am light." The crew laughed. It was the first time they laughed together. The fear of the night was gone. Elena looked at them. Before the storm, they were just men she hired. They were strangers working for money. Now, they were different. They had fought the ocean together and won. They trusted each other. "We are a good team," Elena told them. Draco has a big ship and 100 men. But he does not have this. He does not have loyalty. Dante nodded. We will find him, Captain, and we will take back your ship. They finished their meal and went back to their duties. The rusty crab was still broken and ugly, but the crew was stronger than ever. The next afternoon, the sea remained calm. Finch was sitting high up on the mast, scanning the horizon with his telescope. Suddenly, he shouted down to the deck. Ship ahead. 2 miles east. Elena ran to the bow. Is it Draco? She asked. Finch adjusted the lens. No, Captain. It is a merchant ship. It is painted blue and gold. It looks like it is drifting. Elena took the telescope. She saw the ship. It was a wide, heavy vessel, built to carry cargo, not to fight. Its sails were down, and it was turning slowly in the current. It looked helpless. They were hit by the storm, just like us. Elena said. Dante walked up to her. He touched the handle of his knife. A drifting merchant ship is an easy target. He said quietly. We could take their cargo. We need the money. Elena looked at him sharply. We are not pirates. Dante. We are recovering what is mine. We do not steal from honest sailors. She turned the wheel and steered the rusty crab toward the drifting ship. As they got closer, they saw the name painted on the side. The Gilded Swan. The crew of the merchant ship ran to the railing. They looked terrified. They saw the rusty crab, dirty, ugly, and dark, and thought it was a pirate attack. Do not shoot. The merchant captain shouted. He was a fat man in a silk coat. We have no gold. The storm took everything. Elena cups her hands around her mouth. We are not going to attack you. Do you need help? The merchant captain looked surprised. He lowered his hands. Our rudder is broken. He yelled. The storm snapped the chain. We cannot steer. Elena looked at Barnaby. Can you fix a rudder chain? Barnaby cracked his knuckles. I can fix it in an hour. But it will cost them. Elena smiled. She brought her ship alongside the Gilded Swan. Barnaby jumped over the gap with his tool bag. He disappeared onto the back of the merchant ship. While Barnaby worked, Elena spoke with the merchant captain. His name was Olander. He was very grateful. We were afraid. Olander admitted. There are stories of a black ship attacking vessels in this area. Elena's eyes narrowed. A black ship? Captain Draco? Yes. Olander nodded. 2 days ago, before the storm, we saw a black ship heading northwest, toward the Foggy Isles. It was moving very fast. Elena memorized the direction. This confirmed Finch's guess. An hour later, Barnaby returned. He was covered in grease again. It is fixed. It is stronger than new. Captain Olander was delighted. He ordered his crew to bring up crates of supplies. Please, take this. It is payment for your kindness. They gave Elena 3 barrels of fresh water, a crate of green apples, and a small bag of silver coins. It was a generous reward. Thank you. Elena said. Safe travels. The Gilded Swan raised its sails and moved away. Elena watched them go. See, Dante. Elena said, biting into a crisp green apple. Sometimes, being good pays better than being bad. Dante took an apple and shrugged. Maybe. He said, but the silver is nice, too. The rusty crab continued its journey toward the northwest. The ocean was grey and the air was misty. The crew was in good spirits because of the food and the silver. But Elena was worried. She stood on the deck with Dante. They looked at the empty railing of the ship. "We have food," Elena said. "We have fuel. But we have no teeth. If we find Draco tomorrow, he will blow us out of the water with his heavy cannons. We cannot throw apples at him." Dante nodded. He polished his knife. "I can board his ship and fight. But we need to get close first. We need guns." Finch climbed down from his post. "Captain," he said, "we are passing near Smuggler's Arch. It is a small rock formation. There is a man there who sells old iron." "Does he sell cannons?" Elena asked. "He sells everything that explodes," Finch replied with a grin. Elena steered the ship toward the rocky archway. Hidden behind the stone walls was a small, floating platform. It was made of old ship hulls tied together. Smoke rose from a chimney. It was a shop on the water. They docked the Rusty Crab. A man with a metal hook for a hand walked out to meet them. He had a long black beard and wore a leather apron. This was Korn, the weapon seller. "I need cannons," Elena said directly. "And I do not have a fortune." Korn looked at the Rusty Crab and laughed. "That boat cannot hold heavy guns. The recoil would break the deck. You need something lighter." He showed them two long, brass cannons. They were smaller than the massive guns on Navy ships, but they looked fast and dangerous. "These are swivel guns," Korn explained. "They turn quickly. They are perfect for hitting small targets, like masts or rudders. They do not sink ships, but they disable them." Barnaby inspected the metal. He tapped it with his knuckles. "The brass is good," he told Elena. "No cracks." "How much?" Elena asked. "For 2 guns and 20 crates of powder." Korn calculated. "All your silver, plus 50 gold coins." It was a high price. It was almost all the money they had left. Elena looked at the guns. She looked at her defenseless ship. "Deal," she said. They spent the next hour mounting the cannons. Barnaby drilled holes in the railing. He bolted the guns down tight. They were positioned on the left and right sides of the ship. When they finished, the sun was setting. The brass cannons shined in the orange light. Dante stood behind one of the guns. He aimed it at a floating barrel in the water. "Now we are dangerous," he said. Elena paid Korn the heavy bag of coins. She felt light without the money, but she felt safer. "We are not a merchant ship anymore," Elena said to her crew. "We are a warship." The Rusty Crab sailed further north. The bright blue sky began to change. It turned a dull gray. The air became colder and damp. They were getting close to the Foggy Isles, a place sailors usually avoided. Finch was at the wheel. He squinted his eyes against the mist. "The visibility is getting low, Captain. We can only see about 1 mile ahead. Keep a slow speed," Elena ordered. "We do not want to hit a rock." Suddenly, Dante pointed to the water. "There." A small boat. Bobbing in the grey water was a tiny fishing boat. An old man sat inside. He was pulling a net out of the water. He looked surprised to see a ship in this lonely part of the ocean. Elena slowed the Rusty Crab and shouted down to him. "Hello. We are looking for information." The fisherman stopped his work. He had a weathered face and a long white beard. He looked at the brass cannons on Elena's ship and looked nervous. "I have no money," the fisherman said quickly. "I only have fish." "We do not want your fish," Elena said gently. "We are looking for a ship. A large black ship called the Silver Star. It flies a pirate flag." The fisherman's face went pale. He dropped his net back into the water. His hands shook. The black ghost. He whispered. I saw it. Yesterday morning. Elena leaned over the railing. Where? Tell me. The fisherman pointed a shaking finger toward a wall of thick fog in the distance. He went into the mist. Toward the Skeleton Cove. It is a hidden bay on the largest island. Why did he stop there? Barnaby asked. Draco usually keeps moving. The ship was damaged. The fisherman replied. I saw broken wood on the side. The storm hurt him, too. He is hiding to make repairs. Elena looked at her crew. Her eyes lit up. He is damaged. She repeated. This is our chance. If he is repairing the ship, he cannot sail fast. He is trapped. The fisherman shook his head. Do not go there. The Skeleton Cove is surrounded by sharp rocks. The fog is so thick you cannot see your own hand. Many ships go in, but none come out. We have the best navigator in the world. Elena said, looking at Finch. Finch adjusted his glasses. He looked nervous, but he nodded. I can find a path, Captain, but it will be tight. Elena threw a small bag of silver coins down to the fisherman. Thank you for the truth. Buy yourself a warm coat. The fisherman caught the coins. He looked at them in shock. Good luck. He called out as the rusty crab began to move again. Watch out for the currents. Elena stood at the bow of her ship. The wall of fog was ahead. Somewhere inside that white cloud was her ship, and her enemy. Get ready. She told her crew. We are going in. The wall of fog was only a few miles away. It looked like a white mountain sitting on the water. Elena looked at it, then at her crew. They were brave, but they were a motley group. A mechanic, a navigator, and a lone fighter. Against Draco's trained pirates, they were at a disadvantage. Drop the anchor. Elena ordered. Finch looked surprised. Captain. Draco is in there. If we wait, he might finish his repairs and leave. If we go in there now, we will die. Elena said calmly. We have cannons, but we have never fired them in a battle. We have swords, but can we fight as a team? We need to practice. Barnaby dropped the heavy anchor. The rusty crab stopped moving. Elena walked to the center of the deck. Dante, you are the best fighter. Test them. Dante stepped forward. He moved with the grace of a cat. He threw a wooden stick to Barnaby. Defend yourself. Barnaby caught the stick. He held it like a club. He swung it with all his strength. But Dante was not there. Dante ducked under the swing and tapped Barnaby on the back with his own stick. You are too slow. Dante said. Strength is good, but speed keeps you alive. Do not swing wide. Keep your arms close. Barnaby grunted and tried again. They practiced for an hour. Barnaby learned to use his size to block, rather than just swinging wildly. Next, Elena gathered them around the new brass cannons. Finch, you are on the port cannon. Dante, you are on the starboard. Elena assigned. Barnaby, you handle the powder and the balls. I will steer. They ran a drill. Elena shouted, Target left. Finch tried to turn the cannon, but he fumbled with the lock. Barnaby dropped a bag of gunpowder. It was a mess. If this were a real battle, they would be dead. Again. Elena shouted, Faster. Smooth movements. They did it again. And again. And again. The sun began to go down. They were sweating and tired. But slowly, they improved. Barnaby learned exactly how much powder to load. Finch learned to aim quickly. Dante was a natural marksman. His aim was true. Target right. Elena yelled. Dante spun the brass cannon. Barnaby handed him the ball. The lock was ready in 5 seconds. Fire! Elena commanded. Dante shouted, pretending to fire. Elena smiled. It was much better. They were moving like a machine. They understood each other's movements. As the evening light faded, they sat on the deck, wiping sweat from their faces. My arms hurt. Finch complained, rubbing his shoulder. I am a scholar, not a soldier. Today you are a soldier. Elena said. She looked at the fog. It was dark and threatening now. Tonight, sleep well. Tomorrow, we enter the fog. We will need every lesson we learned today. They ate a silent dinner. The mood was serious. They were ready to face the Pirate King. The morning arrived with a cold silence. The wall of fog was still there, waiting for them. It looked like a white curtain hiding the stage of a theater. The rusty crab bobbed gently on the dark water. Elena stood on the deck with a cup of hot coffee. She looked up at the main mast. It was bare. There was no flag. In the world of the ocean, a ship without a flag was a ghost. It had no name and no honor. Barnaby. Elena called out. Do we have any black canvas? Or a spare top? Barnaby came up from the engine room. I have an old oilcloth. It is black and stained, but it is strong. Why? Bring it. Elena said. And bring the white paint. The crew gathered on the deck. Barnaby laid the heavy black cloth on the wooden floor. It was rough and smelled of tar, but it was perfect. We cannot sail under no flag. Elena told them. When Draco sees us, I want him to know who we are. I want him to be afraid. A pirate flag? Dante asked, a cruel smile on his face. A skull and crossbones? No. Elena said firmly. We are not pirates. Pirates steal for greed. We fight for what is right. Then what? Finch asked, adjusting his glasses. A picture of a map. Elena dipped a large brush into the pot of white paint. She looked at the black cloth. She thought about her beautiful ship, the Silver Star. She thought about how Draco stole it. She thought about the rust and the dirt of her current life. She bent down and painted. She did not paint a skull. She painted a star. But it was not a perfect, neat star. It was jagged and sharp. It looked like a star that had exploded. Below the star, she painted a single, straight line, a sword. The shattered star. Elena said, standing up. It represents us. We are broken, but we are sharp, and we are coming for them. The white paint shone brightly against the black oilcloth. It looked dangerous. It looked like a warning. Barnaby nodded. I like it. It looks angry. They tied the new flag to a rope. Dante pulled it up the mast. The wind caught the heavy fabric. The black flag unfolded, and the white star snapped in the breeze. Elena looked up at it. A shiver went down her spine. Now, they were real. They were not just 3 men and a woman on a boat. They were a crew with a mission. Start the engine. Elena ordered. Her voice was low and serious. Barnaby ran to the engine room. A moment later, the familiar rumble began. The propeller churned the water. Finch, guide us in. Elena said. Finch stood at the bow, staring into the white wall of mist. Slow speed. Captain. God help us. Elena turned the wheel. The rusty crab, flying its new flag of vengeance, sailed forward. The cold, wet fog swallowed them whole. The world turned white, and the hunt began. The fog was thick and cold. It swirled around the deck of the Rusty Crab. Elena could not see the water, only the white mist. The world was silent, except for the soft sound of the engine and the water splashing against the hull. Finch stood at the bow, leaning far over the railing. He wiped his glasses constantly. "I see a shadow," he whispered loudly. "Starboard side." Elena turned the wheel gently. A dark shape emerged from the white cloud. It was a small, fast ship with a single mast. It was painted black, like Draco's fleet. It was a scout ship, patrolling the perimeter of the hideout. "They see us," Dante shouted. A flash of light appeared on the enemy ship. A second later, the sound of a gunshot echoed through the fog. A musket ball hit the wood near Elena's head. Splinters flew into the air. "Battle stations," Elena ordered. Her heart beat fast, but her hands were steady. Barnaby ran to the starboard cannon. He carried a heavy bag of gunpowder. Dante jumped behind the brass gun. He checked the lock mechanism. "They are turning to fire their main gun." Finch yelled, "Turn, Captain! Turn!" Elena spun the wheel hard to the left. The Rusty Crab groaned and leaned to the side. A moment later, a cannonball from the pirate scout flew past them. It missed by only a few feet. It splashed heavily into the water. "Dante, fire!" Elena commanded. Dante looked down the barrel of the brass cannon. The enemy ship was moving in and out of the fog. He waited for a clear shot. "Now," Dante said. He lit the fuse. The cannon fired with a deafening roar. Smoke filled the deck. The ship rocked from the force. They waited for the smoke to clear. "You missed," Barnaby groaned. "You hit the water." "Reload," Elena shouted. "Do not argue. Reload." Barnaby cleaned the barrel quickly and shoved a new bag of powder inside. He handed Dante a fresh iron ball. The pirate scout was turning around for another attack. They were getting closer. Elena could see the faces of the pirates now. They looked angry. "Steady," Dante whispered to himself. He adjusted the angle of the gun. He accounted for the roll of the ship. The enemy ship prepared to fire again. Elena held her breath. Dante fired the second shot. This time, the aim was perfect. The iron ball flew through the air and smashed into the base of the enemy's mast. There was a loud cracking sound of breaking wood. The tall mast tipped over and fell onto the deck of the pirate ship. The heavy sail covered the enemy crew like a blanket. The pirate ship stopped moving. It drifted helplessly in the water. "Direct hit," Finch cheered, jumping up and down. Elena let out a breath she was holding. "Good shot, Dante." The enemy ship was disabled. They could not move and they could not fight. The Rusty Crab had won its first battle. "Do we sink them?" Dante asked, his hand on a knife. "No," Elena said. "We leave them. The fog will hide us again. But now we know. Draco is close." She steered the ship back into the thick mist, leaving the broken scout behind. They were ready for the real war. Elena steered the Rusty Crab away from the disabled enemy ship. The fog was swirling around them, thick and white. They were safe for the moment. "Wait, Captain!" Finch shouted from the bow. He ran back to the wheel. His face was pale. "Stop the ship." "Why?" Elena asked. "We need to leave before other pirates come." "I cannot see the rocks," Finch admitted. He pointed at the wall of mist. "The Skeleton Cove is a maze. If I guess wrong, we sink. That scout ship, they live here. They have a map of the safe path." Elena looked back at the broken pirate ship. It was drifting in the distance. She looked at Dante and Barnaby. They were tired but pumped with adrenaline. We need that map. Elena decided. Turn the ship around. She brought the rusty crab back to the enemy vessel. The pirate ship was in chaos. The heavy mast and wet sail covered the deck. The pirates were shouting and trying to cut themselves free. They were not ready to fight. Barnaby, Dante, go. Elena ordered. Get the map and any gunpowder you can find. Be quick. She brought her ship right next to the enemy. Dante jumped across the gap easily. Barnaby followed with a heavy thud. The pirates on the deck were trapped under the heavy canvas. Dante pointed his pistol at them. Stay down. He warned them coldly. We only want the map. Barnaby ran to the supply crates. He found 2 barrels of high-quality gunpowder and a box of dried meat. He threw them over the railing onto the rusty crab. Elena caught the box of meat. Dante kicked open the door to the captain's cabin. He disappeared inside. A moment later, he came out holding a leather tube. I have it. Dante yelled. Come back. Elena shouted. We are leaving. Barnaby and Dante jumped back onto their own ship. Elena spun the wheel, and the engine roared. They moved away into the fog just as the pirates began to free themselves. Once they were at a safe distance, Finch opened the leather tube. He pulled out a detailed chart. It showed the coastline, the depth of the water, and a red line drawn through the sharp rocks. This is it. Finch said, smiling. This is the key to the maze. With this, I can guide us straight to Draco. Barnaby opened the stolen barrel of gunpowder. This is good powder. He said. Much better than what we bought. Now we have 10 more shots for the cannons. Elena looked at her crew. They were smiling. They had defeated an enemy, taken their supplies, and stolen their secrets. Good work. Elena said. We are not just a nuisance anymore. We are a threat. She looked at the map. The red line led to a large bay in the center of the island. Take us in. Finch. Quietly. The stolen map was perfect. Finch traced the red line with his finger. He called out directions to Elena. Left 5 degrees. Now straight. Watch out for the rock on the right. The rusty crab moved silently through the dangerous waters. The heavy fog hid them, but it also hid the dangers. They passed sharp rocks that looked like giant knives. Without the map, they would have crashed 10 times already. Suddenly, Finch raised his hand. Stop. He whispered. Elena put the engine into neutral. The ship drifted slowly. Look up. Finch said, pointing to a tall, thin rock ahead of them. On top of the rock, there was a small wooden platform. A man sat there on a chair. He was a lookout. Next to him was a large brass bell. If he saw a ship, he would ring the bell. If he rang the bell, the entire pirate fleet would know they were here. The lookout was looking the other way. He was bored. He was eating an apple and looking at the sky. We cannot shoot him. Elena whispered. The noise is too loud. I will handle it. Dante said. He took off his heavy coat and boots. He tied his knife to his belt. Dante lowered himself silently into the cold water. He swam toward the rock. He moved like a fish, making no splashes. He reached the base of the rock and began to climb. The stone was wet and slippery, but Dante was strong. The crew watched from the ship. They held their breath. Dante reached the top of the platform. He stood behind the lookout. The man did not hear him. He was still eating his apple. Dante moved fast. He grabbed the man and covered his mouth with one hand. He held his knife with the other hand. The man dropped his apple. It fell into the water. Dante waved to the ship. "Bring him in." He signaled. Elena steered the rusty crab to the rock. Barnaby threw a rope ladder up to Dante. They tied the lookout's hands and lowered him onto the deck. The man was young, perhaps 25. He wore a red scarf and had a tattoo of a snake on his arm. He looked at the crew with angry eyes. "You are fools." The spy spat. "Do you know where you are? This is the king's territory." "We know," Elena said calmly. "That is why we are here. Draco has 50 ships." The man laughed. "You have this bucket of rust. He will destroy you in seconds." "Maybe," Elena said. "But right now, you are my prisoner, and you are going to tell me exactly where he is." The man looked at Barnaby, who was cracking his knuckles. He looked at Dante, who was cleaning his knife. The spy stopped laughing. He realized these were not normal merchants. "Take him below," Elena ordered. "We need answers." They took the prisoner down to the cargo hold. It was a small room filled with barrels and ropes. Barnaby tied the man to a sturdy wooden chair. A single oil lantern hung from the ceiling, casting long, moving shadows on the walls. Elena stood in front of the prisoner. She crossed her arms. "What is your name?" she asked. The man looked up. He was sweating. "Milo," he muttered. "Listen to me, Milo," Elena said softly. "I do not want to hurt you. I only want your captain. Tell me where the Silver Star is docked." Milo shook his head. "I cannot tell you. Draco will feed me to the sharks if I talk." Dante stepped out of the shadows. He held his long knife. He did not say a word. He just looked at Milo with cold, dead eyes. He began to clean his fingernails with the tip of the blade. Milo swallowed hard. He looked at Barnaby. The giant mechanic was crushing a metal cup in his hand just for fun. "Draco is scary," Elena said. "But Draco is not here. My crew is here." Milo looked at the knife, then at the crushed cup. His loyalty to Draco began to break. He was young, and he did not want to die in a dark room. "Okay," Milo whispered. "I will tell you." "Speak," Elena said. "The Silver Star is at the Iron Pier." Milo said quickly. "It is in the center of the cove. It is the biggest dock." "Is the ship ready to sail?" Elena asked. This was the most important question. "No," Milo answered. "The storm snapped the main mast. They are putting up a new one today. It will take 2 more days to finish the rigging. The ship cannot move." Elena looked at Barnaby. He smiled. 2 days was enough time. How many men are guarding it? Dante asked. Milo hesitated. "Usually 50. But tonight is different. Tonight is the Feast of the Moon. Draco gives the crew extra rum and food. Most of the men will be in the tavern on the shore. Only a few guards will be on the ship." Elena's eyes lit up. This was a stroke of luck. A party meant drunk guards. It meant noise and distraction. "Is there a way to get close without being seen?" Elena asked. "There is a saw tunnel," Milo admitted. "It drains dirty water from the town into the bay. It comes out right under the Iron Pier. It smells terrible, but it is big enough for a small boat." Elena nodded. She had all the information she needed. "You have been very helpful, Milo," Elena said. She turned to Barnaby. "Keep him tied up. Give him water and food. But do not let him leave this room until we are gone." "What about the tunnel?" Dante asked as they walked back to the deck. Do we trust him? He was terrified. Elena said. He told the truth. We are going to sail through a sewer. Dante made a disgusted face. Wonderful. We will smell like garbage. We will smell like victory. Elena corrected him. Tonight, while they drink and sing, we will enter the heart of their city. The sun set, and the fog turned into a dark, suffocating blanket. The rusty crab sat silently behind a tall rock formation. They were close to the skeleton cove, but they were still hidden from the main harbor. Elena gathered her crew on the deck. We cannot take the ship inside, she explained. The sewer tunnel is too small for the rusty crab. We must use the rowboat. Finch looked at the dark water and shivered. I will stay here, he said quickly. I am not a spy. I will guard the ship and the prisoner. Good, Elena said. Keep the lights off. If we are not back before sunrise, leave without us. Finch swallowed hard and nodded. Good luck, Captain. Elena, Barnaby, and Dante climbed into the small wooden rowboat. Barnaby took the oars. His powerful arms moved the boat silently through the black water. They moved away from the safety of their ship and toward the dark cliffs of the island. The smell, Dante whispered, covering his nose. We are close. The air began to smell of rotting fish and old garbage. It was disgusting. Milo was right. This was the drainage pipe for the pirate city. They saw a large, dark hole at the base of the cliff. Dirty water flowed out of it. Barnaby rowed the boat into the hole. Inside, it was pitch black. The sound of dripping water echoed loudly against the stone walls. Do not light a torch, Elena warned. Someone might see the light. They moved forward in the darkness. The tunnel was narrow. The walls were covered in green slime. Rats scurried along the stone ledges, their small claws scratching the rock. This is dignified work for a captain, Dante said sarcastically. Quiet, Elena hissed. Listen. Ahead of them, there was a sound. It was not water. It was music. It was the sound of violins, drums, and loud singing. They were getting close to the exit. Barnaby rowed slower. The tunnel began to widen. A faint orange light appeared at the end. They drifted toward the light. Finally, they reached the end of the tunnel. They were under a large wooden pier. Above their heads, heavy boots stomped on the wooden planks. Dust fell down onto them. The noise of the party was loud here. Elena signaled for Barnaby to stop. They looked out from under the pier. The view was incredible. The Skeleton Cove was a natural harbor hidden inside the island. Hundreds of lanterns hung from ropes, lighting up the water. There were dozens of ships docked there. Buildings were carved into the rock walls of the cliffs. It was Shadow Port, the secret city of pirates. It was loud, chaotic, and dangerous. There, Elena whispered, pointing to the center of the harbor. At the largest dock, surrounded by crates and guards, sat a massive ship. Its black hull shone in the lantern light. The main mast was broken, just as Milo said. The wooden planks above their heads shook with the rhythm of the dancing pirates. Elena pointed to a rusty iron ladder covered in slime. It led up from the water to the dock level. Go quietly, she whispered. Dante climbed first. He moved like a shadow. He peeked over the edge of the pier, looked left and right, and then signaled for the others to follow. Elena climbed next, followed by the heavy breathing of Barnaby. They hid behind a stack of large barrels. The smell of roasted meat and strong rum filled the air. The street was full of pirates. They were singing, fighting, and drinking. It was a chaotic scene. We stick out, Dante said, looking at their wet, dirty clothes from the saw. We look like saw rats. We need new clothes. Elena agreed. We need to look like them. They crept behind a row of wooden shacks. Behind a tavern, there was a clothesline. Shirts, vests, and coats hung there to dry. Sorry. Elena whispered to the empty air. She grabbed a long coat with gold buttons and a wide-brimmed black hat. She put them on. The coat was too big, but it hid her weapons well. She pulled the hat low over her eyes. Barnaby found a large leather vest. He tried to put it on, but his muscles were too big. The fabric tore at the shoulders. It is tight. He grumbled. It is perfect. Dante said, You look like a brute. Nobody will mess with you. Dante tied a red scarf around his neck and rubbed dirt on his face. Now, they looked like a crew of rough sailors who had just arrived from a long voyage. Walk with confidence. Elena told them. Do not look at the ground. Look them in the eye. Then look away. Act like you belong here. They stepped out from behind the building and joined the crowd. The noise was deafening. A group of pirates was dancing around a large fire. Another group was throwing knives at a wooden target. A drunk man with a wooden leg bumped into Barnaby. The man stumbled and looked angry for a second. Then he saw Barnaby's size and his mean face. Sorry, brother. The man shouted and limped away. Barnaby relaxed his fists. It is working. He whispered. They walked slowly toward the iron pier. The crowd became thinner as they got closer to the Silver Star. The area around Draco's ship was restricted. There were no dancers here, only armed guards. Elena stopped by a stack of crates. She looked at her ship. It was painful to see it so close but out of reach. The damage from the storm was visible. The main mast was a stump of broken wood. Scaffolding surrounded the deck where carpenters were working. There are 6 guards at the gangplank. Dante counted. And 2 on the deck. We cannot just walk on. We need a distraction. Elena said. Or we need to be clever. She looked at the supplies on the dock. There were barrels of water and crates of food waiting to be loaded onto the ship. I have an idea. Elena said. Elena looked at the stack of heavy wooden crates on the dock. They were stamped with the words "Fine Rum." Pick that up. Elena whispered to Barnaby and Dante. If we carry something heavy, the guards will think we are workers. Nobody stops a worker carrying rum. Barnaby lifted a heavy crate onto his shoulder as if it were a feather. Dante picked up a smaller box. Elena adjusted her stolen hat and walked in front of them. She looked important. She looked like a quartermaster. They walked up to the gangplank of the Silver Star. The guards crossed their spears to block the path. Halt! One guard grumbled. No visitors. The captain is sleeping. Elena stared at the guard. She made her voice deep and rough. This is not a visit. This is the captain's reserve stock. Do you want to tell Draco that his rum is late because you stopped us? The guard looked at the heavy crate on Barnaby's shoulder. He looked at Elena's confident face. He did not want to make Draco angry. Go ahead. The guard muttered, stepping aside. Put it near the kitchen galley. Elena's heart pounded in her chest. She stepped onto the deck of her ship. The wood felt familiar under her boots. She ran her hand along the smooth railing. She knew every scratch and every plank on this ship. It was her home, and now it was occupied by thieves. They walked to the galley and put the crates down. The deck was a mess. Tools and ropes were everywhere. The main mast was indeed broken, a jagged stump of wood sticking up from the floor. Look. Barnaby whispered, pointing to the engine hatch. They have welded it shut. They are replacing the main pistons. This ship cannot move under its own power. Elena nodded slowly. The reality hit her hard. Even if they killed the guards, they could not sail the Silver Star away. It was a sitting duck. We cannot take it tonight. Elena whispered back. It is too broken. She looked up at the captain's quarters. The windows were glowing with warm yellow light. Her old cabin. She saw a shadow move across the window. It was a tall figure wearing a hat. Draco. He was in her room, sitting at her desk, looking at her maps. Her hand went to the pistol under her coat. She wanted to run up there and end it. Dante saw her hand move. He grabbed her arm gently. Not now, Captain. He hissed. There are too many of them. If you shoot, we die. Elena took a deep breath. She forced her hand away from the gun. Dante was right. This was not the time for anger. This was the time for intelligence. Let's go. She said quietly. I have seen enough. They turned around and walked back down the gangplank. The guards did not even look at them. They were just invisible workers again. But as they walked away from the ship, Elena's mind was racing. The ship was stuck here for days. That gave her time. They walked away from the bright lights of the iron pier and found a dark, narrow alley between two warehouses. The mud was deep here, and it smelled of old fish, but they were hidden. Elena leaned against the damp wooden wall. She took off the stolen hat and wiped the sweat from her forehead. Her heart was still beating fast from being so close to her enemy. We cannot take the ship. Elena said quietly. Not tonight. It is dead in the water. If we try to start the engine, it will explode. If we try to use the sails, there are no sails. Barnaby nodded. He looked serious. The new engine parts are sitting on the dock in crates. The new mast is still a raw log lying on the sand. It will take them at least 3 days to install everything. Dante cleaned his fingernails with his knife. 3 days is too long. If we stay here, we will be caught. Someone will notice 3 strangers smelling of sore water. We do not stay for 3 days. Elena said. We need to make sure Draco stays here for a month. How? Asked Barnaby. Sabotage. Elena said. Her eyes were cold and hard. Draco needs those engine parts. He needs that wood for the mast. He needs the tar and the ropes in the warehouse. If those things disappear, or break, he cannot fix the Silver Star. Dante smiled. It was a wicked smile. I like this plan. We break his toys. Elena looked at the layout of the port. Near the base of the cliff, there was a large, open shed. Inside, there were stacks of high-quality timber and piles of iron supplies. It was the shipyard's main storage. That is our target. Elena pointed. The shipyard store. If we destroy the supplies, Draco has to send ships to find more. That buys us time to bring the Rusty Crab into position and maybe find more allies. How do we destroy it? Barnaby asked. Fire. Fire is too bright. Elena said. It will attract the whole city. We need to be subtle. We ruin the supplies so they look fine, but fail when they use them. I can mix sand into the engine oil. Barnaby suggested. It will destroy the pistons inside the machine. I can cut the ropes halfway. Dante added. They will look strong, but snap when they pull them. And the wood? Elena asked. Termites. Barnaby joked. No. Elena said. We weaken the supports. When they lift the heavy mast, it falls. Dangerous. Dante said approvingly. Let's go. Elena said. We have a few hours before the sun rises. We need to cause a lot of expensive accidents. They moved out of the alley, heading toward the dark shipyard. They were no longer just observers. They were saboteurs. The shipyard supply shed was a large building with no doors, just a roof held up by wooden beams. It was dark inside, but the moonlight showed piles of valuable materials. There were stacks of lumber, coils of thick rope, and barrels of oil and tar. "Work fast," Elena whispered, "and be quiet." Barnaby went straight to the barrels marked engine oil. These were for the Silver Star's high-performance engine. Barnaby opened the lid of the first barrel. The oil was thick and golden. He knelt on the ground and scooped up a handful of sharp, gritty sand. "This will hurt," Barnaby whispered. He dropped the sand into the oil. He did this to 5 barrels. He used a stick to stir the sand into the oil until it disappeared. When they start the engine, the sand will scratch the pistons. The engine will seize up in 10 minutes. Dante moved to the back of the shed. He found the coils of heavy rope. These ropes were used to lift the heavy masts and cannons. Dante took his sharp knife. He did not cut the rope completely. He carefully cut the inner strands, leaving the outside layer looking perfect. "It looks strong," Dante said softly, admiring his work. "But if they try to lift anything heavier than a dog, it will snap." Elena searched for the hardware. She found a heavy wooden crate filled with brass bolts. These bolts were essential for securing the engine to the hull. Without them, the engine would vibrate until it broke the ship apart. The crate was too heavy to carry away. Elena looked around. She saw a deep, muddy hole near the back of the shed where the rainwater collected. She dragged the heavy crate to the hole and pushed it in. The heavy box sank into the thick mud. She covered it with some old canvas and dirt. "They will spend days looking for these bolts," Elena said. Suddenly, they heard heavy footsteps on the gravel outside. A guard was walking his patrol. He carried a lantern. "Hide," Elena hissed. Barnaby squeezed his large body behind a stack of timber. Dante climbed up into the rafters of the roof like a spider. Elena crouched behind a barrel of tar. The guard walked into the shed. He swung his lantern back and forth. The light passed over the barrels of oil. It passed over the cut ropes. It passed over Elena's hiding spot. The guard stopped. He sniffed the air. Barnaby smelled like old engine grease, and the shed usually smelled like wood. The guard frowned. He took a step toward the timber where Barnaby was hiding. Dante, hanging from the wooden beam above, pulled a small stone from his pocket. He threw it to the far side of the shed. The guard spun around. "Who is there?" he shouted. He walked toward the noise, away from Barnaby. Finding nothing but a rat, he grunted and walked out of the shed. "Just rats," he muttered. Elena let out a breath. "That was close," she whispered. "We are done here. Let's move." The sky to the east was beginning to turn a pale, dirty gray. The cover of darkness was fading fast. Elena, Barnaby, and Dante walked quickly away from the shipyard. The adrenaline from the sabotage was replaced by the urgent need to escape. "We stayed too long," Dante whispered. He kept looking over his shoulder. "The city is waking up." The chaotic noise of the party had died down. Most of the pirates were now passed out on the streets or had returned to their ships. The silence made it much harder to move without being heard. Their boots crunched loudly on the gravel path. They reached the main street that led back to the pier. Suddenly, Barnaby pulled Elena and Dante into a dark doorway. "Patrol," he breathed. A group of 10 soldiers marched down the center of the street. These were not the drunk, sloppy pirates from the party. These men wore matching black leather armor and carried muskets. They were Draco's elite guard, the Black Watch. The leader of the patrol held a lantern high. "Check the alleys," he barked. "I heard noises near the supply shed." Elena pressed her back against the rough wood of the door. She held her breath. If they were found here, dressed in stolen clothes and smelling of the saw, they would be executed immediately. The soldiers began to look into the shadows. One soldier walked toward their doorway. Elena's hand went to her pistol. She looked at Dante. He nodded. His knife was ready. The soldier stepped closer. The light from his lantern swung across the ground. It illuminated Barnaby's large boot. "Hey!" the soldier shouted. "You there!" Thinking quickly, Elena stepped out of the shadows. She grabbed Barnaby's collar and pretended to shake him. She slurred her speech, acting drunk. "Get up, you lazy giant!" Elena shouted at Barnaby. "The captain wants his rum. Stop sleeping." Barnaby understood immediately. He groaned and stumbled forward, acting like a confused drunk. "No more rum," he mumbled. The soldier lowered his musket slightly. He looked at the three of them, a loud woman, a giant oaf, and a thin man leaning against the wall. They looked like just another group of hungover pirates after a night of celebration. "Clear the street," the soldier ordered with disgust. "The sun is rising. Get back to your ship." "Aye, sir," Elena said, saluting sloppily. She shoved Barnaby. "Move it." The soldier turned away and rejoined his patrol. They marched past, their heavy boots fading into the distance. Elena let out a shaky breath. Her hands were trembling. That was too close. "You are a good actor, Captain," Dante whispered with a rare smile. "Let's go," Elena said, "before they come back." They hurried to the edge of the pier. They climbed down the slippery iron ladder into the cold, dark water. The smell of the saw tunnel greeted them like an old friend. They found their small rowboat hidden in the shadows under the dock. They climbed in silently. Barnaby grabbed the oars. He rowed with powerful strokes, pushing them back into the dark tunnel. As they disappeared into the hole in the cliff, the first ray of sunlight hit the water of the harbor. They had escaped by seconds. The return journey through the dark tunnel felt endless. Barnaby rowed hard, his breathing loud and heavy in the enclosed space. The water was black and oily. Elena sat at the back of the small boat, her pistol still in her hand. She watched the opening of the tunnel behind them, expecting to see a boat of angry guards chasing them. But the tunnel remained empty. The only sound was the splash of the oars and the squeaking of rats. Finally, the air became fresh again. The smell of the saw faded, replaced by the clean, salty smell of the open ocean. They exited the hole in the cliff and entered the thick fog of the cove. "Which way?" Barnaby asked, his voice tired. The fog was disorienting. Every direction looked the same. Finch said he would wait near the twin rocks. Elena said, "Row straight." They moved silently through the mist for 20 minutes. Panic began to rise in Elena's chest. What if Finch had left? What if the patrol found the rusty crab? Then, a shape appeared in the grey whiteness. It was the ugly, peeling hull of their ship. It looked beautiful to Elena. "Finch," she whispered loudly. A head popped up over the railing. It was the navigator. He looked terrified. "You are back. I thought you were dead." Barnaby rowed alongside the ship. They climbed the rope ladder with tired legs. As soon as Elena's boots touched the deck, she felt her legs go weak. The tension of the night finally hit her. "Did anyone see you?" Finch asked, helping Dante onto the deck. "We saw the whole city," Dante said, wiping the dirt from his face. and we left them a few surprises. We sabotaged the supplies. Elena explained. She took off the stolen pirate coat and threw it on a crate. Draco cannot sail for a week, maybe longer. His engine will fail, and his ropes will snap. Finch smiled nervously. That is good news. But we must leave. The fog is lifting. If the sun comes out, the lookout will see us. You are right, Elena said. She walked to the wheel. Pull up the rowboat. Raise the anchor. Barnaby and Dante worked quickly. They hoisted the small boat onto the deck and secured it. The anchor chain rattled as it came up from the deep water. Which way, Captain? Finch asked. Away from here, Elena said. We have bought ourselves time. Now we need to use it. We cannot fight Draco alone. We need friends. Friends? Dante laughed dryly. We are outlaws. We have no friends. There are others who hate Draco. Elena said. We will find them. She turned the wheel. The rusty crab turned its back on the skeleton cove. The engine rumbled softly, pushing them away from the danger. They had walked into the lion's den and walked out alive. Elena looked back at the wall of fog one last time. Enjoy your repairs, Draco. She whispered. When I come back, I will not be hiding. The ship sailed into the open ocean. The morning sun finally broke through the clouds, shining on their black flag with a shattered white star. They were safe, for now. The rusty crab sailed south, putting miles between itself and Draco's fortress. The ocean was wide and empty. The danger of the morning was gone, but a new problem weighed on Elena's mind. She called a meeting on the deck. The crew sat on crates, eating dried meat and drinking water. They looked tired but proud. We did well, Elena began. We slowed Draco down, but we did not stop him. In a week, he will fix his ship. Then, he will come for us with 50 cannons. Barnaby crushed a piece of hard bread in his hand. We have 2 small cannons. We cannot fight a war. Exactly, Elena said. We need help. We need a fleet. Dante laughed. We are outlaws, Captain. The Navy will hang us. The merchants fear us. Who will help us? Elena looked at Finch. The navigator knew the history of the ocean better than anyone. Finch, who else hates Draco? Who did he crush to become the king? Finch thought for a moment. He took off his glasses and cleaned them. There is one man, he said slowly. Captain Thorn. Thorn? Dante asked. I thought he was dead. Not dead, Finch corrected. Exiled. Years ago. Thorn controlled these waters. Draco betrayed him, sank his fleet, and took his territory. Thorn escaped with only one ship. The Hammer. He hides in the salt marshes now. The salt marshes. Barnaby grumbled. That place is a maze of mud and shallow water. It is a terrible place. It is the perfect place to hide. Elena said. Does Thorn still fight? Rumors say he is waiting. Finch said. Waiting for a chance to kill Draco. But he is a bitter man. He does not trust strangers. Elena stood up. She looked at the horizon. He hates Draco. That is enough for me. If we can convince him to join us, we have a chance. His ship is heavy and strong. It can withstand Draco's fire. And if he refuses? Dante asked. He might just kill us and take our ship. Then we fight him, too. Elena said simply. We have no choice. We need allies. She turned to Finch. Set a course for the salt marshes. It will take 2 days. Finch nodded. It will be tricky navigation. Captain, the water is shallow. I trust you. Elena said. The mood on the ship changed. They were no longer running away. They were building an army. Elena went to her cabin to study her maps. She needed to figure out what to say to a bitter ex-pirate king. She had to offer him something he could not refuse: revenge. The salt marshes were a strange and difficult place. The open blue ocean was gone. Instead, the water here was green and still. Tall grass grew out of the water, higher than a man's head. The air smelled like sulfur and wet earth. Finch stood at the bow of the rusty crab. He held a long wooden pole. He poked the water to check the depth. Too shallow here. Finch shouted. Turn right. Captain. We will get stuck in the mud. Elena turned the wheel. The ship moved slowly through the maze of grass and water. It was quiet. There were no seagulls, only the buzzing of insects. I do not like this place. Barnaby grumbled. He was cleaning his hands with a rag. It is a trap. If we get stuck, we cannot move. We are sitting ducks. Thorn is smart. Elena said. He hides where big ships cannot go. Draco's galleons are too deep for this water. They sailed for 3 hours. The sun was hot and humid. Suddenly, the wall of tall grass ended. They entered a large, hidden lagoon. In the center of the lagoon sat a ship. It was the Hammer. It was not beautiful like the Silver Star. It was short, wide, and looked very heavy. Its hull was reinforced with thick iron plates. It looked like a floating castle. Stop the engine. Elena ordered. Before the rusty crab could stop completely, 4 cannon ports on the Hammer opened. 4 black cannons pointed directly at them. A loud voice boomed across the water. Turn around or sink. Elena walked to the railing. She did not hide. She wore her captain's coat. She cupped her hands around her mouth. I am Captain Elena. I wish to speak with Captain Thorn. Thorn speaks to no one. The voice yelled back. Leave. I have information about Draco. Elena shouted. I know where he is. And I know he is vulnerable. There was a long silence. The cannons did not move. Then, a rope ladder was thrown over the side of the Hammer. Come alone. The voice ordered. I will go. Elena told her crew. It is a trap. Dante warned. Let me come with you. No. Elena said. Thorn is a proud man. If I bring a bodyguard, he will think I am weak. I must go alone. Barnaby rowed her over in the small boat. Elena climbed the heavy iron ladder. When she reached the deck, she saw a crew of 20 men. They looked old and scarred, veterans of many wars. In the center stood Captain Thorn. He was an older man with gray hair and a thick beard. He had a wooden leg and scars on his face. He looked at Elena with suspicious eyes. You are a bold woman. Thorn grumbled. You come into my home and speak that name. Why? Draco stole my ship. Elena said, looking him in the eye. I want it back. And I know you want his head. Thorn laughed, a dry, rasping sound. I have wanted his head for 10 years. But he is too strong. Not today. Elena said. His ship is broken. His supplies are sabotaged. He is stuck in Skeleton Cove for a week. We can kill him. Thorn stopped laughing. He stepped closer. Tell me everything. Elena stood firm on the deck of the Hammer. The wind blew her hair across her face. But she did not move. She explained every detail of their mission in Shadow Port. She told Thorn about the sand in the engine oil, the cut ropes, and the missing bolts. Thorn listened silently. He stroked his grey beard. His crew gathered around, listening to the story of the sabotage. When Elena finished, there was a long silence. "You walked into the lion's mouth," Thorn said slowly, "and you pulled out his teeth. Draco is stuck." Elena repeated, "His fleet is confused without orders. If we strike now, we can win." Thorn looked at his heavy ship. He looked at his scars. "I have waited 10 years for this. But my ship is slow. The hammer is built for defense, not for chasing. My ship is fast enough to draw them out." Elena proposed, "I will be the bait. I will lure Draco's smaller ships away. Then, you crush them with your heavy cannons." Thorn's eyes narrowed. He looked at Elena with a new respect. "It is a dangerous plan. You could be destroyed before I arrive. I am willing to take that risk," Elena said. Thorn turned to his men. "What do you say? Do we rot in this swamp forever? Or do we fight?" The crew of the Hammer cheered. They raised their fists and weapons. They were tired of hiding. They wanted battle. "It is decided," Thorn said. He extended his hand. It was rough and calloused. "We are partners. But we cannot attack from here. The salt marshes are too far from Draco's base." "Where do we go?" Elena asked. "There is a cove," Thorn said. "It is called Dead Man's Drop. It is only 4 hours from Shadowport. It is hidden by high cliffs. We can hide both ships there and prepare for the attack." Elena nodded. "My crew is ready." Thorn signaled to his quartermaster, "Prepare the ship. We leave within the hour." Elena climbed back down the ladder to her small boat. Barnaby rowed her back to the Rusty Crab. Her crew was waiting anxiously. "Well?" Dante asked, cleaning his knife. "Did he kill you?" "He is with us," Elena said with a smile. "Follow the hammer. We are going to a forward base." The 2 ships left the green water of the marshes. The hammer moved first, pushing the water aside with its heavy iron hull. The Rusty Crab followed behind. They sailed until evening. As the sun went down, they saw the entrance to Dead Man's Drop. It was a narrow opening between 2 massive cliffs. Inside, the water was deep and calm. It was a perfect hiding spot. They dropped their anchors in the dark water. The 2 ships floated side by side. They were a strange pair, a heavy iron fortress and a small, battered merchant boat. But together, they were an army. The morning sun did not reach the bottom of Dead Man's Drop. The high cliffs cast long shadows over the 2 ships. The water was still and black. It was a quiet place, perfect for dangerous work. Thorn waved to Elena from the deck of the Hammer. "Come aboard, Captain. We need to check our teeth." Elena took the small boat over to the iron ship. Barnaby and Dante came with her. They climbed down into the deep cargo hold of the Hammer. It was cool and dry down there. Thorn pointed to the back of the room. There were stacks of wooden barrels marked with a black X. "I have been saving this for 10 years," Thorn said. 50 barrels of high-grade gunpowder. It is enough to blow a hole in the moon." Barnaby's eyes went wide. He walked over and touched a barrel gently. "This is beautiful," he whispered. "With this, we can make a very big noise." "We have the powder," Elena said. "But we do not have enough cannons to fire it. Draco has 50 ships. We have 2. Thorn nodded. He limped around the barrels on his wooden leg. "We cannot win a shooting match. We need to be smarter. We need a trap. Floating mines." Dante suggested. He looked at the barrels. We fill them with powder and scrap metal. We float them in the water. When Draco's ships hit them, they sink. Thorn smiled. It was a scary smile. I like how you think, boy. We can create a minefield at the entrance of the bay. For the rest of the day, the two crews worked together. It was dangerous work. They opened the barrels of gunpowder. The air smelled of sulfur. They had to be very careful. One spark from a boot or a tool could kill everyone. Barnaby worked with Thorn's gunner, an old man with one eye. They filled empty wine barrels with the black powder. Then, they added rusty nails, pieces of chain, and sharp stones. These things would fly out like bullets when the barrel exploded. Pack it tight. Barnaby said. We want maximum pressure. Dante cut long pieces of fuse. He waterproofed them with wax so they would burn even if they got wet. 5 minutes. Dante calculated. That is how long the fuse burns. We have to time it perfectly. Elena watched the men work. The crew of the Rusty Crab and the crew of the Hammer were no longer strangers. They were brothers in arms. They laughed and shared stories as they built the deadly weapons. By sunset, 20 floating mines were ready. They sat on the deck of the Hammer, looking like ordinary barrels. But inside, they were death. We are ready, Thorn said, wiping his dirty hands on his coat. Tomorrow, we lay the trap. Elena looked at the barrels. Draco thinks he is the hunter. She said, tomorrow, he becomes the prey. The next morning, the crew was nervous. The time for hiding was over. The time for fighting was near. The 20 powder-filled barrels were quietly floating in the water near the entrance of Dead Man's Drop. The two ships were hidden behind the cliffs, ready to sail out. Elena and Captain Thorn stood on the deck of the Hammer. They addressed the combined crew of nearly 50 men and women. The air was thick with tension. Listen to me. Elena's voice was sharp and clear. You are here because you are tired of running. You are here because Draco is a thief and a bully. She walked to the edge of the deck. He stole my ship, the Silver Star. He took Captain Thorn's kingdom. He has crushed every small sailor and every honest merchant for 10 years. She pointed to the black flag of the shattered star flying on the Rusty Crab. They think we are weak. They think we are only 4 people on a garbage boat. But they are wrong. We are strong because we fight for a purpose. We fight for what is right. A low murmur ran through the crew. They gripped their swords and axes tighter. Draco is stuck in his port. Elena continued. We crippled his ship. Now, we are going to attack. We will lure his ships into our trap. We will sink them, and we will take back the Silver Star. Thorn stepped forward. He leaned heavily on his wooden leg. Many of you are young, he said, his voice gravelly. You may be afraid. That is good. Fear keeps you careful. But remember this. Draco is a snake. If we wound him, he will strike back hard. We must kill him on the first blow. He looked at Elena. Captain Elena has a plan. It is dangerous, but it is the only way. The plan is simple. Elena said. We sail out. We find Draco's patrol ships. We do not fight them. We run. The Rusty Crab is fast enough to outrun them. We lead them back here. We lead them into the minefield we set this morning. The moment they cross the line. Thorn finished. We ignite the fuses. They sink. Then, we sail to Skeleton Cove and finish the job. We will not ask for quarter. Elena said fiercely. And we will not give it. This is the final fight. The crew roared. They hit their weapons against the railings. The sound echoed off the cliffs. The tension was broken. They were ready for war. Barnaby, Dante. Elena ordered. You stay on the hammer with Thorn. You are the engineers and the best shots. You will manage the explosion. Finch, she said, looking at her navigator. You and I will go on the Rusty Crab. We are the bait. Let's go fishing. Elena and Finch climbed aboard the Rusty Crab. The small, ugly ship was now the most important piece in their plan. They started the engine and steered out of the shadow of Dead Man's Drop. Behind them, hidden by the high cliffs, the hammer sat motionless. Thorn, Barnaby, and Dante were watching the entrance of the cove. They had long poles with burning oil rags tied to the ends. These were the ignition sticks for the mines. The Rusty Crab sailed quickly toward the open water. The sun was fully up now, and the fog had lifted completely. The visibility was good. We need to be seen. Elena said. Draco will have patrols out looking for us after the attack on his supplies. Finch climbed the mast to get a better view. After 5 minutes, he shouted down. Captain! 2 ships. Fast sloops, 3 miles east. They are black and flying the dragon flag. Perfect. Elena said, smiling grimly. They are too fast for the hammer to catch, but they are stupid enough to chase us. Elena steered the Rusty Crab toward the 2 pirate ships. She wanted them to see her flag clearly. The black flag with the shattered star snapped proudly in the wind. The pirates saw the ship. They must have been furious to see the vessel that had attacked their supplies. They turned their 2 ships and began to chase the Rusty Crab. They are fast. Finch noted anxiously. They are gaining on us. We are faster if we don't try to turn. Elena said. Give me the course back to the cove. We must lead them through the narrowest point. Finch quickly gave her the coordinates. Elena put the engine to full speed. The Rusty Crab vibrated violently. The old engine strained, coughing smoke, but it pushed the ship faster than ever before. The 2 pirate sloops followed, their sails full. They fired muskets at the Rusty Crab, but the range was too far. The balls splashed harmlessly into the water. They are too close. Finch yelled. Less than a mile. Hold on. Elena shouted. She steered the ship sharply around a tall, solitary rock. She was aiming straight for the entrance of Dead Man's Drop. As they approached the cliffs, the pirate ships fired their main cannons. The iron balls hit the water behind the Rusty Crab, sending up plumes of spray. Close. Elena screamed. Get ready to jump. Elena raced the Rusty Crab past the line where the mines were floating. She gave the wheel one last spin to turn the ship into the safe water and killed the engine. Jump! She shouted. She and Finch leapt off the deck and onto a small, low rock near the cliff wall. The Rusty Crab drifted on its own. The 2 pirate ships, blinded by their rage, sailed straight past the same rock. They were going full speed, right into the middle of the hidden barrels. They were too close to stop. The pirates on the ships yelled in surprise when they saw the hidden barrels floating around them. Now! Thorn! Now! Elena screamed from the rock. From the safety of the small, slick rock, Elena watched the pirate ships crash into the trap. The 2 black sloops had sailed right into the minefield. The pirates were shouting, confused and frantic, trying to steer their ships away from the floating barrels. Suddenly, 2 figures emerged from the shadows of the cliff at the entrance of the cove. It was Barnaby and Dante. They held the long poles with the burning oil rags. Barnaby reached out and touched the pole to the fuse of the first floating barrel. The fuse sparked and began to burn with a fierce, fast hiss. Dante lit the second fuse. They have 5 minutes. Elena yelled from the rock. We must get to the hammer. The pirates on the nearest sloop saw the burning fuses. They realized the barrels were not just debris. They were explosives. Panic broke out on their decks. The nearest pirate captain, a large man with a scar, stared at Barnaby and Dante. He raised his pistol and fired. The shot missed Barnaby but hit the rock near Dante's head. "Run!" Thorn's voice boomed from the hidden position inside the cove. Barnaby and Dante ran back toward the safe entrance of the cove, disappearing into the dark shadows. The pirate captain, realizing the two men who lit the fuses were gone, focused his anger on the rusty crab, which was drifting right in front of them. The pirate captain believed the captain of the small ship was the mastermind. "Destroy that ugly boat!" The pirate captain screamed. "Forget the barrels. Shoot the little ship." The cannons on both pirate sloops turned. They did not care about the slow-burning fuses. They wanted immediate revenge. Elena looked at her ship. It was floating peacefully in the line of fire. It had served its purpose as bait, but it was too valuable to lose. It was her freedom. "They are shooting the rusty crab." Elena shouted to Finch. "We have to go, Captain." Finch grabbed her arm. "The mines are going to blow." They jumped back into the small, sturdy rowboat that Barnaby had left for them. Elena grabbed the oars and rowed furiously toward the safety of the hammer. As the rowboat sped away, the pirate sloops fired their heavy cannons. Iron balls slammed into the hull of the rusty crab. Wood splintered and cracked. The masts began to tip. The old, loyal ship shook violently. Elena rowed harder, watching her ship be destroyed. It was a sacrifice. 2 minutes. Thorn's voice echoed across the water. The two pirate sloops were now less than 50 feet from the line of barrels. They were too preoccupied with destroying the rusty crab to notice the danger they were in. They kept firing. With a final, massive blow, the rusty crab's hull broke. The ship listed heavily, the black flag with the shattered star slipping into the water. Suddenly, a massive sound erupted. The first mine exploded. The sound was not just a boom. It was a physical blow. The air compressed and hit Elena's chest like a hammer. The first mine detonated under the bow of the lead pirate sloop. A column of white water and black smoke shot 50 feet into the air. Then, the chain reaction began. 3 more barrels exploded. The water churned violently. The lead pirate ship was lifted out of the water. Its spine snapped in two. Wood, canvas, and bodies flew through the air. The second pirate ship tried to turn away, but it was too late. It drifted into a cluster of 2 mines. The explosion tore a massive hole in its side. The ship groaned, a terrible, dying sound, and began to sink rapidly. Elena stopped rowing. The water in the cove was rocking their small boat. She looked past the destruction of the enemy ships to the rusty crab. Her ship, the ugly, rusted, brave little trawler, was already half submerged. The pirate cannon fire had done its job. The bridge was underwater. The engine room, where Barnaby had worked so hard, was flooded. "She is gone," Finch whispered, wiping his glasses. He sounded heartbroken. Elena watched the black flag with the shattered star touch the water. It floated for a moment, then was pulled down into the deep. "She was a good ship," Elena said softly. Her throat felt tight. "She took us further than anyone expected." There was no time for a funeral. The hammer emerged from behind the cliff. Its engine roared, and its crew stood ready at the rails with muskets. But there was no need to fight. The pirate sloops were gone. Only wreckage and a few survivors clinging to driftwood remained. Thorn steered his iron ship alongside Elena's rowboat. Barnaby threw down a rope. He pulled Elena and Finch up onto the deck. Barnaby looked at the empty spot in the water where the rusty crab used to be. He took off his grease-stained cap and held it against his chest. "I just fixed the piston." He murmured sadly. We traded a pawn for 2 knights. Thorn said, limping over to them. He looked at the wreckage. It was a brilliant maneuver, Captain Elena. But now you are homeless. No, Elena said, her eyes hardening. She turned her gaze toward the open sea, toward the north where Skeleton Cove lay. I am not homeless. My home is waiting for me. I just have to go take it back. Thorn nodded. He respected her strength. The patrol ships are destroyed. Draco is blind. He will not know we are coming until we are in his harbor. Then we do not wait. Elena said. We strike now. While he is confused. While he is repairing the Silver Star. To the Skeleton Cove. Thorn shouted to his crew. The men of the hammer cheered. They raised the sails to aid the engine. The heavy ship turned its bow toward the pirate stronghold. Elena stood at the front of the ship. She had lost her vessel, but she had gained an army. She had no retreat left. If they failed to take the Silver Star, they would have nothing. Draco. She whispered to the wind. I am coming. The journey back to Skeleton Cove felt different this time. Before, they were sneaking around in a garbage scow. Now, they were standing on the deck of a warship. The hammer cut through the waves, its iron hull smashing the water aside. Elena stood with Captain Thorn in the wheelhouse. The map of the cove was spread out between them. We have the element of surprise, Thorn said, tracing the coastline. But we do not have the numbers. Once the shooting starts, Draco's men will swarm us. We have maybe 20 minutes before we are overwhelmed. That is all the time I need. Elena said. Here is the plan. Thorn continued. I will take the hammer straight down the center. I will draw the fire of the shore cannons and the guard ships. My ship can take the punishment. And while you are being shot at, Elena asked, you take the longboat. Thorn said, you take your crew and 5 of my best boarders. You slip through the smoke and board the Silver Star. If you can capture Draco, the battle is over. The snake dies without its head. Elena nodded. It was a desperate plan. The hammer would be a giant target, absorbing all the damage to give Elena a clear path. Barnaby. Dante. Elena called out. They came running. Suit up. We are going in. Barnaby grabbed a heavy warhammer from Thorn's armory. It suited him better than a sword. Dante sharpened his knives and checked his pistols. Finch stood by them, looking nervous but determined. He held a small pistol with trembling hands. You do not have to come, Finch. Elena said softly. You can stay here in the wheelhouse. Finch shook his head. I am the navigator. I know the layout of the Silver Star better than anyone. If you need to find Draco fast, you need me. Elena smiled proudly. Then stay close. The sun was beginning to set when the cliffs of Skeleton Cove appeared on the horizon. The sky was a bruised purple and orange. Battle stations. Thorn roared. The crew of the hammer ran to their positions. The cannons were loaded. The muskets were primed. The ship did not slow down. It accelerated. There! The lookout shouted. The watchtower. They saw the rock where they had captured the spy. A new lookout was there. He saw the massive iron ship charging toward the harbor. He frantically rang the warning bell. Too late. Thorn laughed. The hammer surged past the narrow entrance rocks. They burst into the main harbor of Shadow Port. The scene was chaotic. Pirates on the docks were scrambling. Ships were trying to raise their sails. But right in the center, docked at the iron pier, sat the Silver Star. Fire! Thorn commanded. The hammer's broadside cannons erupted. Smoke and fire filled the air. The first volley smashed into a row of pirate barracks on the shore. Wood exploded. The battle for the Pirate King's throne had begun. "Lower the boat," Elena shouted. Her team jumped into the longboat. They hit the water and began to row hard toward the Silver Star, using the smoke from the cannons as cover. The harbor was a nightmare of noise and fire. To the left, the Hammer was a fortress of smoke. Its cannons thundered relentlessly, smashing the pirate barracks and suppressing the enemy ships. In return, the shore batteries pounded Thorn's ship. Iron balls clanged against the heavy metal plating, sounding like giant bells. "Keep your heads down," Elena screamed. She crouched in the bow of the longboat. Barnaby and two of Thorn's men rowed with desperate speed. The water around them erupted in white geysers as stray musket balls and debris hit the surface. "Faster!" Dante yelled. He stood at the back, firing his pistol at a group of pirates running along the pier. "They see us." A cannonball from a shore battery whistled over their heads. The wind of its passing shook the small boat. It splashed into the water 20 yards away, sending a wave of cold water over Finch. He gasped but held onto his map case tightly. They reached the shadow of the Silver Star. Up close, the black hull looked like a wall. It was sleek, beautiful, and deadly. The scaffolding for the mast repairs was still attached to the side, a lattice of wooden beams and ropes. "The gangplank is too exposed," Elena shouted. "We climb the scaffolding." Barnaby brought the boat alongside the wooden beams. He grabbed a crossbeam and held the boat steady. "Go." "I will hold it." Dante went first. He climbed with the agility of a monkey, his knife between his teeth. He reached the deck railing in seconds and peeked over. "Clear for now." He signaled down. Elena followed. Her boots found purchase on the slippery wood. Her heart pounded against her ribs. This was it. She was climbing back onto her own ship. Every inch of wood felt familiar. Finch struggled to climb. He slipped, his feet dangling over the dark water. Barnaby reached up with one massive hand and shoved him upward. "Move, little bird." Barnaby grunted. One by one, they pulled themselves over the railing and onto the main deck. The deck of the Silver Star was chaos. The crew was running back and forth, distracted by the battle with the Hammer. They were loading the portside cannons, focusing entirely on Thorn's ship. They did not look behind them. Elena drew her sword. She stood by the main hatch. She took a deep breath of the smoky air. "Now!" she yelled. The element of surprise was perfect. Elena, Dante, Barnaby, and the 5 boarders charged. Intruders! A pirate screamed, dropping a ramrod. Dante was a blur of motion. He knocked the first pirate down with the hilt of his sword. Barnaby swung his massive war hammer. He did not hit a man. He hit a cannon. The brass gun was knocked off its carriage, crushing the wheel. "Secure the deck," Elena ordered. "Don't let them rally." The pirates were confused. They were fighting a battleship on one side and a boarding party on the other. They hesitated. Then, the door to the captain's quarters kicked open. A tall figure stepped out. He wore a long coat of red velvet and a hat with a peacock feather. He held a jeweled sword in one hand and a golden pistol in the other. His face was handsome but twisted with rage. It was Draco, the Pirate King. He looked at the chaos on his deck. Then, his eyes locked onto Elena. He did not look afraid. He smiled, a cold, cruel smile. "Elena," Draco said, his voice cutting through the noise of the battle. "You are like a bad penny. You just keep coming back." "Get off my ship, Draco," Elena said, raising her sword. "Your ship." Draco laughed. He leveled his golden pistol at her heart. Possession is 9/10 of the law, my dear. And currently, I possess the gun. Draco's finger tightened on the trigger of his golden pistol. Elena stared down the barrel, refusing to blink. Suddenly, the silver star groaned violently. A cannonball from the hammer smashed into the hull below the waterline. The deck lurched sideways. Draco stumbled, his aim ruined. The bullet buried itself in the wooden mast, inches from Elena's ear. "Get him!" Elena shouted. Chaos erupted. Barnaby roared and charged into the group of Draco's bodyguards, swinging his hammer like a battering ram. Dante moved like Quicksilver, engaging 2 pirates at once with his knives. Finch scrambled behind a barrel, throwing heavy belaying pins at anyone who came close. Elena lunged at Draco. The Pirate King was quick. He threw aside his empty pistol and parried Elena's strike with his jeweled sword. Steel clashed against steel, sending sparks flying into the smoky air. "You fight with anger." Draco sneered, stepping back effortlessly. "It makes you sloppy." "I fight for my home." Elena gritted out. She slashed at his legs, but he jumped over the blade. Draco was a master swordsman. He fought with one hand behind his back, treating the duel like a game. He drove Elena backward, step by step, toward the quarterdeck stairs. "Look around you, Elena." Draco mocked. "My fleet is rallying. Your iron friend out there is taking heavy fire. You have already lost." Elena glanced sideways. He was right. The hammer was surrounded by 3 pirate galleons. Thorn was fighting a losing battle to buy her time. She had to end this now. She attacked with a flurry of strikes. High, low, left, right. Draco blocked every single one. He caught her blade with his hilt and twisted his wrist. Elena's sword flew out of her hand. It clattered across the deck, sliding out of reach. Draco laughed. He pointed his sword at her throat. "Checkmate." Elena backed up until her back hit the railing of the quarterdeck. She was trapped. Above her head hung a heavy block and tackle, part of the rigging for the new mast that was never installed. "Any last words?" Draco asked, stepping closer. "Perhaps a thank you for keeping my ship warm." Elena looked at the heavy wooden block swaying above Draco's head. The rope was tied to the railing right next to her hand. It was one of the ropes Dante had sabotaged in the warehouse, cut halfway through to look solid but be weak. "Actually," Elena said, her eyes flashing, "I do have one word." Draco raised an eyebrow. "Oh." "Snap," Elena said. She grabbed the sabotaged rope and yanked it with all her strength. The weakened fibers tore instantly. The heavy wooden pulley block, no longer secured, swung down like a pendulum. Draco looked up too late. The block, weighing 50 pounds, slammed into his chest. The air left Draco's lungs. He was lifted off his feet and thrown backward. He crashed into the main mast and slid to the deck, gasping for air, his sword falling from his hand. Elena didn't hesitate. She dove for her own fallen sword. She rolled, grabbed the hilt, and sprang to her feet. Draco tried to stand, clutching his bruised ribs. He looked up to find the tip of Elena's blade pressing against his throat. "The game is over, Draco," Elena said coldly. The fighting on the deck stopped. The pirates saw their invincible king on his knees, defeated. Barnaby held a pirate in a headlock, and Dante had a knife to another's throat. They all froze. "Surrender," Elena shouted to the pirate crew, "or your king dies." Draco looked at his men. He looked at the blade at his neck. The arrogance faded from his eyes, replaced by fear. "Drop your weapons." Draco wheezed. One by one, The pirates dropped their swords and muskets. The metallic clatter on the wooden deck was the sound of victory. The silence on the deck of the Silver Star was heavy. The only sounds were the distant boom of cannons from the bay where the hammer was still fighting for its life. Elena pressed the sword tipped slightly against Draco's skin. "Tell them to stop," she ordered. "Now." Draco glared at her, but he saw the look in her eyes. He knew she would kill him. He slowly stood up, clutching his chest. He walked to the railing, his velvet coat dirty and torn. "Cease fire!" Draco screamed. His voice cracked, but it carried over the water. "Stand down. All ships, stand down." He signaled to his quartermaster, a man shaking with fear. "Raise the white flag." Draco spat the words out like poison. The quartermaster fumbled with the ropes. Slowly, a white flag rose up the temporary flagpole. Across the bay, the gunners on the pirate galleons hesitated. They saw the white flag on their king's ship. They saw Draco held at sword point. One by one, the cannons fell silent. The smoke began to drift away, revealing the battered hull of the hammer. Thorn's ship was full of holes, but it was still floating. Elena grabbed Draco by the collar and shoved him toward Barnaby. "Lock him in the brig. Put him in the deepest, darkest cell we have." Barnaby grinned. He grabbed Draco by his expensive coat and dragged him away. "Come on, Your Highness. Let's see how you like the rats." Elena turned to the gathered crowd, her crew, Thorn's boarders, and the surrendered pirates. She sheathed her sword and walked to the wheel. It was polished wood with silver inlays. She placed her hands on it. It felt warm. It felt right. "Listen to me." Elena shouted to the pirates on the deck and the dock below. "Draco is finished. He ruled you with fear and greed. He stole from you to build his own fortune." She pointed to the warehouse they had sabotaged. "He hoarded supplies while you risked your lives. That ends today." The pirates murmured. They knew it was true. Draco lived like a king while they lived in squalor. "I am Captain Elena," she announced. "The Silver Star is mine. But I do not want to be a king. I want to be a sailor. Anyone who wants to sail as a free man can stay. Anyone who still loves Draco can jump in the water and swim." No one jumped. A few pirates lowered their heads in respect. A cheer went up from the longboat below. Finch was waving his hat. Dante walked up to Elena. He looked exhausted. His clothes were cut, and he was bleeding from a scratch on his cheek. But he was smiling. "You did it, Captain," Dante said. "You actually did it." "We did it," Elena corrected him. Just then, the hammer limped toward the pier. It was leaking water and smoke was pouring from its deck. But Captain Thorn stood on the bow, leaning on his wooden leg. He saluted Elena with a slow, solemn nod. Elena returned the salute. "Finch," Elena called out. "Find the signal flags. Lower the white flag." "What do we fly, Captain?" Finch asked, scrambling up the stairs. Elena looked at the empty flagpole. "Fly the star. The shattered star." Minutes later, the black flag with the broken white star rose above the harbor. It wasn't a symbol of royalty or terror. It was a symbol of resilience. It meant that even if you are broken, you can still fight. You can still shine. The sun finally set, casting a golden glow over the cove. The war was over. Elena took a deep breath of the salty air. She was home. The morning sun rose over Skeleton Cove, but this time, it did not shine on a place of fear. The smoke from the battle had cleared. The harbor was busy, but it was the noise of repair, not war. Elena walked along the iron pier. She wore a clean coat found in her old wardrobe. It fit perfectly. She felt like herself again. She found Captain Thorn sitting on a crate near the gangplank of the Hammer. His ship was in bad shape. The iron hull was dented and scarred, and the main mast was splintered. She will not sail for a long time, Thorn said, patting the side of his ship. Her fighting days might be over. She saved us, Elena said. Without the Hammer, we would be dead. Thorn looked at the busy port. And now? What happens now? You are the conqueror. Do I call you Queen Elena? Elena laughed. No. I saw what being a king did to Draco. It made him paranoid and cruel. The ocean is too big for one ruler. Then who leads this place? Thorn asked. Draco's fleet is scattered, but there are still hundreds of pirates here. They need order, or they will turn on each other. You lead them, Elena said. Thorn looked surprised. Me? I'm an old man with one leg. You are a legend. Elena corrected him. They respect you. You held the line against Draco for 10 years. You can turn Shadowport into a real free city. A place for trade, repairs, and rest. No more raiding innocent towns. Thorn stroked his beard. He looked at the fortifications of the cove. He liked the idea. A free port. It would make us rich without spilling blood. I will not stay. Elena continued. I am not a governor. I am a captain. I want to be out there, on the water. Then let us make a pact. Thorn said. He stood up and offered his hand. I hold the rock. You rule the waves. Shadowport is always safe harbor for the Silver Star. Agreed, Elena said, shaking his hand. Later that afternoon, they gathered the remaining captains of the pirate fleet in the Great Hall, a large cavern carved into the cliff where Draco used to hold court. A massive wooden throne sat on a dais, covered in stolen gold and velvet. Elena walked up to the throne. The room went silent. This chair, Elena said, her voice echoing off the stone walls, is why you were poor. Draco took everything for this chair. She nodded to Barnaby. The giant mechanic stepped forward with his war hammer. With a mighty roar, he swung the hammer. The wooden throne splintered. He swung again and again until the symbol of the Pirate King was nothing but firewood. There are no kings here, Elena shouted. From now on, this is a council. Captain Thorn speaks for the port. You speak for your ships. We share the profits. We share the work. The captains looked at each other. They were used to bowing, not sharing. But slowly, they began to nod. A life of trade and shared profit sounded better than dying for a tyrant's vanity. Long live the council! Someone shouted. Long live the council! The room echoed. Elena smiled at Dante and Finch, who were standing by the door. They had won the war, but more importantly, they had changed the world. The war was over, but the work was just beginning. For the next 2 weeks, the Iron Pier buzzed with activity. This time, however, the workers were not slaves or fearful pirates. They were paid men working for the council. Barnaby practically lived in the engine room of the Silver Star. It was 10 times the size of the Rusty Crab's engine room. It smelled of brass, oil, and power. It is a mess, Barnaby told Elena, wiping grease from his face. He was smiling. Draco didn't take care of her. The valves are sticky, and there is still sand in the oil lines from our little trick. But he patted the massive steel piston. She is a beast. Once I clean her up, she will outrun the wind. On the deck, carpenters were installing the new main mast. It was a massive trunk of ironwood, strong and straight. Elena watched as the crane lowered it into place. It fit perfectly into the socket. "Higher," she ordered. "Secure the stays." Dante sat on the railing, sharpening his knife. He looked bored. "Peace is noisy," he complained, "and dusty. Peace is necessary," Elena said. "We cannot fight every day, Dante. Sometimes we have to build." "I'm not a builder," Dante said, looking at the workers. "I am a fighter. What happens to me now? Do I become a merchant? Do I sell spices?" Elena looked at him seriously. "You are my protector. And we are not just merchants anymore. We are the keepers of the peace. There are still dangers in the ocean, Dante. Sea monsters, storms, and other pirates who won't accept the council. I will need your blade." Dante sheathed his knife. He looked satisfied. "Good. I would be a terrible spice merchant." Finch emerged from the captain's cabin. He was carrying a stack of leather-bound books. He looked like a child in a candy store. "Captain." Finch beamed. "I found Draco's charts. He has mapped areas we didn't even know existed. The frozen north, the whispering archipelagos. The whole world is in these books." Elena took one of the maps. It showed a path through a storm belt that no one had ever crossed. He was a tyrant, she admitted. But he was an explorer, too. "We can go anywhere," Finch said, his eyes shining behind his glasses. By the end of the week, the Silver Star was whole again. The hull was patched and painted. The black paint of Draco's reign was scraped away, revealing the gleaming silver wood beneath. But Elena made one change. She ordered the new flag, the black cloth with the jagged white shattered star, to be raised on the main mast. Thorn walked down the pier to admire the work. He looked at the silver ship with the black flag. "She is beautiful," Thorn said. "Like a ghost." "She is a survivor," Elena corrected. "Like us." "The hold is full," Thorn said. "Food, water, and enough coal for a month. A gift from the council." "Thank you, Thorn," Elena said. "What will you do with Draco?" "He is on a small raft," Thorn said grimly. "We gave him a loaf of bread and a jug of water. We pushed him out to sea. If the ocean wants him, it can have him. If not, he is gone from our world." It was a fitting punishment. The king of the ocean was now just a speck on the waves. Elena climbed the gangplank. Her crew was waiting. Barnaby stood by the engine telegraph. Dante stood at the bow. Finch stood by the map table. "Engine room, ready." Elena called into the speaking tube. "Ready to roar, Captain." Barnaby's voice boomed back. "Cast off lines," Elena ordered. The ropes splashed into the water. The massive engine rumbled to life, vibrating through the deck plates. It was a deep, powerful sound, very different from the coughing of the rusty crab. The Silver Star pulled away from the dock. Elena turned the wheel. The ship responded instantly, cutting through the water smoothly. They sailed past the wreckage of the battle, past the high cliffs, and out into the open ocean. The horizon was wide and blue. "Where to, Captain?" Finch asked. Elena looked at the map. She looked at the endless possibilities. "South," Elena said, smiling. "Let's see what is beyond the edge of the map." 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Skeleton Cove. The grey, cold waters of the north were far behind them now. The ocean around the Silver Star was a brilliant, sparkling turquoise. The air was warm and smelled of tropical flowers carried on the breeze. Elena leaned against the railing of the quarterdeck, a cup of tea in her hand. She watched the bow of her ship slice through the calm waves. The Silver Star was living up to its name. It was fast, smooth, and quiet. There was no rattling, no leaking, and no smell of rust. But it was different now. It wasn't just a rich merchant's vessel anymore. The hull bore the scars of battle, painted over but still visible as uneven textures in the wood. And flying above them was not a flag of commerce, but the shattered star. Barnaby emerged from the engine hatch. He was wearing a clean grease-stained vest, his version of formal wear. He held a large wrench like a scepter. "She is purring, Captain," Barnaby said, wiping his brow. "The temperature is perfect. We could run at this speed for a year." "Don't push her too hard, Barnaby." Elena smiled. "We are in no rush." "I like this speed," Dante said, dropping down from the rigging. He landed silently next to them. He looked different, too. The tension that used to live in his shoulders was gone. He was still dangerous, but he was no longer hunted. No pirates. No navy. Just us and the fish. "Are you bored, Dante?" Elena asked. "A little," Dante admitted with a grin. "But the coffee is better on this ship." Finch ran out of the chart room, clutching a telescope and one of Draco's stolen journals. "Captain, look. 2 degrees to starboard." Elena raised her own telescope. On the horizon, rising out of the blue water like emerald towers, were the jagged peaks of a new land. Clouds swirled around their summits, glowing pink in the morning light. The whispering archipelagos. Finch breathed. Draco's notes say the wind there sounds like voices. He says there are ruins of an ancient civilization hidden in the jungle. Nobody has landed there in 50 years. Elena lowered the telescope. She looked at her crew. They were a motley family, a disgraced scholar, a gentle giant, an assassin, and a captain who had lost everything and won it back. They weren't looking at her for orders because they had to. They were looking at her because they trusted her. "What do you think?" Elena asked them. "Do we stop for supplies?" Barnaby cracked his knuckles. "I bet they have good fruit." Dante checked his belt knife. "I bet they have good danger." Finch adjusted his glasses. "I bet they have secrets." Elena turned the silver wheel. The ship banked gracefully toward the mysterious green islands. "Then it is decided," Elena said. "We go explore." The Silver Star adjusted its course. The white foam of the wake trailed behind them, writing a temporary line on the face of the eternal ocean. The past was a story written in ink and blood, finished and closed. The future was a blank map, waiting for them to draw the lines. Elena looked up at the black flag snapping in the wind. They were the shattered Star crew. Broken pieces put back together, stronger than before. Full steam ahead. Elena whispered, and the adventure continued. The map had not lied. As the Silver Star approached the cluster of islands, the wind changed. It didn't just blow, it sang. It whistled through the jagged rocks and the tall, hollow trees on the shore, creating a sound that sounded like 1,000 people whispering at once. "It is unsettling," Finch said, clutching his notebook. He stood on the deck, straining to hear distinct words in the noise. "It sounds like they are watching us." "It is just wind," Barnaby said, though he gripped his wrench tighter. "Just air moving through rocks. Physics." Elena steered the ship into a natural bay. The water here was crystal clear, revealing colorful coral reefs 20 feet below. "Drop the anchor," she ordered. The chain rattled down, disturbing a school of bright blue fish. The Silver Star settled into its new temporary home. "Dante, Barnaby, Finch, with me," Elena said. "Bring weapons, but also bring empty sacks. We need fresh fruit and water." And keep your eyes open. Draco's notes said nobody has landed here in 50 years, but that doesn't mean the islands are empty. They lowered the longboat and rowed to the white sandy beach. The jungle ahead of them was a wall of green. Giant ferns, thick vines, and trees with roots as tall as houses blocked their view. As soon as their boots hit the sand, the whispering got louder. The wind pushed through the leaves. "Did you hear that?" Dante asked, spinning around, his hand on his sword. "It asked who we are." "It is a trick of the mind," Finch said, though his voice shook. "Pareidolia. The brain tries to find patterns in random noise." "Let's move," Elena said. "We stick together." They found a game trail, a narrow path made by animals, cutting through the dense foliage. They walked for an hour. The air was hot and humid. Barnaby used his machete to clear the thick vines. Suddenly, the jungle opened up into a clearing. In the center stood a massive stone statue. It was covered in moss and vines, but the shape was clear. It was a giant stone head, carved from gray rock. Its eyes were closed, and its mouth was open in a silent scream. Finch ran toward it, forgetting his fear. "Incredible. Look at the carving style. This isn't pirate work. This is ancient." He brushed the moss away from the base of the statue. There were symbols carved into the stone. "Can you read it?" Elena asked. Finch adjusted his glasses. "It is an old dialect. Very old. It says, 'The guardian sleeps. Do not wake him, for his anger is the storm.'" The guardian. Barnaby looked around at the peaceful trees. What guardian? Just then, the ground beneath their feet trembled. It was a low, rhythmic vibration. It didn't feel like an earthquake. It felt like footsteps. Dante crouched low. "Something is coming," he whispered. "Something big." The whispering wind changed pitch. It turned into a low moan. The birds in the trees suddenly stopped singing. Elena drew her sword. "Back to the beach," she ordered quietly. "Now." But as they turned to leave, the thick wall of vines behind them rustled. Two giant yellow eyes, glowing in the shadows of the jungle, opened and looked down at them. The eyes blinked, vertical pupils narrowing in the gloom. Slowly, the creature emerged from the tangle of vines. It was a lizard, but of nightmare proportions. It stood as tall as a house, its body covered in thick, grey scales that looked exactly like the ancient stone of the ruins. A ridge of jagged spines ran down its back, vibrating in the wind. It's a dragon," Barnaby stammered, taking a step back. "No," Finch whispered, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and fascination. "It's a rock drake. They are supposed to be extinct. They hunt by vibration." The drake let out a low hiss. The sound harmonized with the whispering wind, making it hard to tell where the creature ended and the air began. It took a heavy step forward, crushing a fern the size of a carriage. "Don't move," Elena hissed. "If it hunts by vibration, movement is death." They froze. The drake lowered its massive head. Its tongue, thick and purple, tasted the air. It swung its head left, then right. It was blind in the traditional sense. Its eyes were milky white, clouded by age or evolution. But those vertical pupils sensed heat and movement. A drop of sweat rolled down Dante's nose. He didn't wipe it. Suddenly, a coconut fell from a tree high above them. The drake snapped. It moved with terrifying speed for its size. Its jaws clamped down on the spot where the coconut had landed, shattering the ground and sending dirt flying. "Run!" Elena screamed. The spell of stillness was broken. They bolted back down the game trail. The drake roared, and charged after them. Trees snapped like twigs as it barreled through the jungle. "Faster!" Barnaby yelled, grabbing Finch by the back of his shirt and hauling him over a fallen log. The ground shook violently with every step the beast took. The whispering of the wind grew to a shriek as the drake's spines vibrated in agitation. It was a sonic weapon, making their ears ring and their balance waver. "My head!" Finch cried, covering his ears. "I can't think." "Don't think, just run," Dante shouted. He pulled a pistol and fired a shot over his shoulder. The bullet sparked harmlessly off the drake's stone-like hide, but the loud bang confused the creature. It shrieked and thrashed its head, biting at the air where the sound had come from. "It hates the noise," Elena realized. "The loud noise hurts it." They burst out of the jungle and onto the white sand. The longboat was where they left it, bobbing in the shallow water. "Get to the boat," Elena ordered. But the drake had recovered. It burst through the tree line, cutting off their path to the water. It stood between them and escape, hissing, its tail lashing back and forth. They were trapped against the wall of the jungle. The creature loomed over them, ready to strike. "We need a big noise," Elena said desperately. "Barnaby, do you have any powder?" "No," Barnaby said, hefting his machete. "But I have this." He pointed to a large, hollow driftwood log lying on the beach. It was dry and brittle. "Dante, the pistol," Elena commanded. "Not at the lizard. At the log." Dante understood immediately. He reloaded with shaking hands. He aimed at the hollow log. "Cover your ears," Elena shouted. The sound amplified inside the hollow wood, creating a thunderous crack that echoed off the cliffs. The drake screamed in pain, shaking its head violently. It stumbled backward, retreating into the tree line to escape the sonic assault. "Now!" Elena yelled. They sprinted past the confused beast and splashed into the water. They shoved the longboat off the sand and scrambled inside. Barnaby and Dante grabbed the oars and rowed like madmen. As they pulled away, the drake recovered. It stood at the water's edge, roaring at them. But it refused to enter the ocean. Safe in deep water, Elena collapsed onto the bench, breathing hard. "Well," Finch wheezed, adjusting his crooked glasses. "We found the Guardian. And we woke him up," Barnaby added, rubbing his ringing ears. "I think we should shop for fruit on a different island." Elena looked back at the jungle. The drake was fading back into the shadows, becoming one with the stone and trees again. "Agreed," Elena said, a wild smile forming on her face. "But imagine what that creature is guarding. If we survive this trip, we are coming back." Safely back on the deck of the Silver Star, the crew caught their breath. The roar of the rock drake had faded, replaced once again by the gentle lap of waves and the distant, eerie whispering of the wind. "Well," Barnaby said, wringing out his wet shirt. "That was exciting. But we still have no water and no fruit. And I lost my hat." Finch mourned, looking back at the green wall of the jungle. Elena looked at the chart Finch had rescued. "We can't go back to the main island. That beast is too dangerous without heavy weaponry. But we can't leave empty-handed." Finch adjusted his glasses, squinting at the map. "Wait. Look here." He pointed to a small off the coast of the main island, separated by a channel of deep blue water. Draco's notes call this the Offering Stone. It looks like a small rocky islet, too small for a giant lizard to live on. "Does it have water?" Dante asked. "There is a blue symbol next to it," Finch said. "It's worth a look." Elena nodded. "Raise the anchor." We moved the ship closer to that islet. The The Silver Star maneuvered carefully around the coral reefs until they reached the small island. It was little more than a pile of white rocks and hardy palm trees, surrounded by a ring of calm, crystal-clear water. It looked peaceful. They took the longboat again. This time, the landing was quiet. No ground shook. No eyes watched them from the bushes. "Check the perimeter," Elena ordered. Dante scouted the rocks while Barnaby and Finch looked for resources. Within minutes, Barnaby gave a shout. "Captain! Coconuts! And look!" Elena walked over. In the center of the islet, there was a natural depression in the rock. It was filled with cool, clear rainwater. It wasn't a spring, but a catch basin. It was enough to fill their barrels. "Fill the casks," Elena said, relieved. "Barnaby, harvest the fruit." While the crew worked, Elena walked to the edge of the islet where Dante was standing. He was staring down into a deep tidal pool. "What do you see?" Elena asked. "Architecture," Dante said quietly. Elena looked down. The water was perfectly clear. About 10 feet below the surface, the coral reef gave way to smooth, cut stone. There were pillars, broken and covered in barnacles, lining a wide underwater path. The path led straight into the side of the islet, disappearing into a submerged cave mouth. "Finch," Elena called. The navigator came running, a coconut in each hand. When he saw the underwater ruins, he dropped the fruit. "It is a temple." Finch breathed. "The islet isn't just a rock. It's the top of a sunken structure. The offering stone wasn't a place to find supplies. It was an entrance." "An entrance to what?" Barnaby asked, joining them. "To the civilization Draco wrote about." Finch said, his eyes wide. "The drake guards the surface. But the secrets are underwater." Elena looked at the dark cave mouth below the water. The sun rays danced on the stone pillars. It was beautiful and mysterious. "We have our water," Elena said. "We have our food. We could leave right now and sail south to the trade routes." She looked at her crew. Dante was already taking off his boots. Barnaby was grinning. Finch was vibrating with curiosity. "But we aren't traders anymore, are we?" Elena smiled. "We are explorers. I can hold my breath for 3 minutes." Dante bragged. "I can rigged up a diving hose with the engine's air pump." Barnaby countered. "We can go deeper." Elena clapped her hands. "Barnaby, get the pump. Dante, get the lanterns. We are going down." Barnaby's invention was ugly, but he promised it was airtight. It was a modified wine cask, reinforced with iron bands and fitted with a thick glass window on the front. A long, rubberized canvas hose connected the top of the helmet to a hand-cranked air pump sitting on the rocks of the islet. "It will be heavy out of the water," Barnaby explained, tightening a bolt on the collar. "But underwater, the buoyancy will help. Just walk along the bottom. Captain, if you need air, tug the rope twice. If you are in trouble, tug 3 times." Elena nodded as Barnaby lowered the heavy helmet onto her shoulders. The smell of old wine and oak was strong inside. She took a breath. The air hissed in, tasting of rubber, but it was fresh. "I will be right behind you," Dante said. He was stripped to his waist, a knife strapped to his leg. He took a deep breath and dove into the water with a splash. Elena stepped off the ledge. The weight of the helmet dragged her down immediately. The world turned from bright tropical sun to a cool, silent blue. Bubbles roared past her ears. She hit the sandy bottom, 10 feet down, kicking up a cloud of silt. When the dust settled, she looked up. The surface was a shimmering mirror above her. Dante was swimming circles around her, looking like a human shark in his element. Elena walked forward. It was like walking on the moon. Slow, bouncing steps. She approached the sunken path. The ruins were magnificent. The pillars were carved with images of sea serpents and storms. Brightly colored coral grew on the stone, and tiny fish darted in and out of the cracks. The underwater temple was a garden of life. She reached the cave mouth. It was dark and foreboding. Dante swam ahead, holding a waterproof lantern, a jar filled with bioluminescent algae they had scraped from the rocks. The eerie green light illuminated the tunnel. Elena followed. The water here was colder. The tunnel sloped downward, then leveled out. The walls were smooth, not natural. They were lined with strange, metallic veins that gleamed in the lantern light. After 50 feet, the tunnel began to slope upward sharply. Elena struggled to climb the incline in her heavy gear. Dante grabbed her arm and helped pull her up. Suddenly, Elena's helmet broke the surface. She was in an air pocket. She stood up. The water was only waist deep here. She unscrewed the faceplate of her helmet, gasping for natural air. It was stale and smelled of ozone, but it was breathable. Dante. She whispered. Her voice echoed loudly in the small chamber. Dante surfaced next to her, shaking his wet hair. "We are inside the island," he said, holding up the lantern. The chamber was a perfect circle. The walls were not made of stone, but of a dark, polished metal that didn't rust. In the center of the room stood a pedestal. Resting on the pedestal was not gold or jewels, but a simple, crystalline sphere the size of a melon. It was humming. "Do you hear that?" Elena asked. The whispering. Dante realized. It's coming from the sphere. The sound wasn't wind. It was a vibration coming from the crystal. It resonated in their chests. The sphere glowed with a faint, pulsing blue light. Elena stepped closer. The metal floor was etched with a map. It showed the islands, the ocean currents, and something else. "Dante, look at the floor," Elena said. "It's a navigation chart, but the stars are wrong." Dante looked down. "These aren't stars. These are ley lines. Energy currents." Elena reached out to touch the sphere. As her finger brushed the cold crystal, the humming stopped. The light in the room shifted from blue to amber. A deep, mechanical sound ground beneath their feet. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a dark staircase spiraling up into the dry rock. "We found the back door." Dante grinned. "No need to fight the lizard. This isn't just a temple," Elena said, looking at the advanced metalwork. "It's a machine. The guardian outside isn't guarding a god. It's guarding a control room." She screwed her faceplate back on. "We need Finch. He has to see this." Elena and Dante climbed the spiral staircase carved into the dry rock. It wound upward tight and steep, the air growing warmer as they ascended. Finally, they reached a flat stone ceiling. Dante pushed against it. With a grinding sound of stone against stone, a hidden trapdoor swung open. They emerged into the blinding sunlight on the surface of the islet, right in the middle of a cluster of palm trees. Barnaby and Finch jumped in surprise. They had been watching the water, expecting bubbles, not their friends popping out of the ground like moles. "You are dry," Finch exclaimed. "How?" "We found the back door," Elena said, brushing dust off her diving suit. "And you were right, Finch. It is not a temple. It is a machine. Get your books. You need to see this." Finch didn't need to be told twice. He scrambled down the dark hole with his journal. Barnaby followed, squeezing his broad shoulders through the opening. When they reached the metallic chamber below, the reaction was immediate. Barnaby whistled low, running his hand over the smooth, rust-free walls. "This isn't iron," he muttered. "It's too light. And the seams. I can't even feel them. Whoever built this knew more about metal than anyone in the shipyard." Finch was staring at the crystal sphere. He walked around the pedestal, his eyes darting across the glowing floor etchings. "This is it," Finch whispered, his voice trembling. "The legacy of the Ethel Guard." "The who?" Dante asked, leaning against the doorway. "The Ethel Guard. The Cloud Walkers," Finch said, not looking up. "Legends say they were a civilization that could sail the wind as easily as we sail the sea. They disappeared 1,000 years ago. Draco was obsessed with finding their technology." Finch reached out toward the sphere. "The whispering we heard outside. It isn't wind. It's a broadcast. A signal." "A signal for what?" Elena asked. "For navigation," Finch said. He placed both hands on the pedestal. The room suddenly hummed louder. The amber light in the crystal flared. The lines on the floor, the map of the ocean, began to move. The glowing currents shifted, flowing like liquid light. "Look." Finch pointed. "These aren't water currents. They are air currents. Trade winds. Storm fronts. Jet streams." He rotated the sphere slightly. The map zoomed out. It showed the whispering archipelagos, but it also showed the entire world. And in the center of the vast ocean, far to the south, there was a pulsing red light. "What is that?" Barnaby asked. "The hub," Finch theorized. "The central spire. If this is a relay station, that is the source." Elena looked at the red pulse. It was located in a part of the map that was usually blank on standard charts, the silent expanse. A region sailors avoided because there was no wind for sails. But look at the current leading to it, Elena noted. She traced a thick, glowing line on the floor. "There is a jet stream that leads directly there. A highway of wind. If we could harness that wind," Barnaby said, scratching his chin, "the Silver Star could travel faster than any ship in history. We could cross the ocean in days, not months." "But why did they hide it?" Dante asked. "Why build a giant stone lizard to guard a map?" "Because," Finch said, his face pale in the amber light, "this map doesn't just show the weather. It controls it." He pointed to a lever on the side of the pedestal. I think if I pull this, the storm outside stops. Or it gets worse." Elena grabbed Finch's hand. "Don't touch it. We are sailors, Finch. We ride the storm. We don't command it. That kind of power is dangerous." Finch nodded slowly, pulling his hand back. "You are right, Captain. Hubris destroyed the Ethel Guard. We should not repeat their mistake. We have the location," Elena said, looking at the pulsing red light one last time. "That is our next destination. The central spire. If there is more technology there, engines, materials, knowledge, it could change the world. And if Draco knew about this," Barnaby said grimly, "it is a good thing we stopped him. He would have used this to sink every ship that didn't bow to him." "Let's go," Elena said. "We have water, we have fruit, and we have a course. The Silver Star is waiting." As they turned to leave, the sphere pulsed once more. A soft, melodic chime rang out, like a bell. It wasn't a warning. It sounded like a welcome.